to the fifth annual edition of the Metaverse Safety Week. The Metaverse Safety Week, or MSW, as we're going to abbreviate it to, is the global business awareness campaign created by XRSI, or the X Reality Safety Intelligence Campaign, that brings together diverse stakeholders to embrace change and enable the safe adoption of new technologies in our evolving digital world. As immersive technologies and AI continue to reshape our reality, MSW's 2024 focuses on proactively addressing emerging technologies whilst harnessing transformative opportunities. From human rights and healthcare to education and governance, we're fostering collaborative dialogues to build resilient frameworks that protect individuals while promoting responsible innovation. Through strategic global community labs like these, we aim to create actionable insights that help to shape an open, safe, and inclusive metaverse for us all. My name is David Syme. I'm an emerging technologies specialist and lecturer, and I'm the moderator for this track today. I'm thrilled to guide our discussions today as I've been working to incorporate new technologies like artificial intelligence, virtual and augmented reality into the way that we teach and learn for most of my career. And I can't wait to hear the ideas and approaches used by the highly accomplished group of education specialists we have with us today. I'm proud to introduce X Reality Safety Intelligence, or XRSI, as the organizer of this award-winning safety campaign, Metaverse Safety Week. XRSI's mission is to pioneer the establishment of robust data, privacy, safety, and security standards and certifications for the emerging tech industries. I'm joined today by my co-chair for this track, my very good friend Jamie Schwartz, who is also an accomplished emerging technologies specialist and a fellow lecturer and communications expert. We have also a number of volunteers and XRSI staff who are graciously running the show for us behind the scenes. Today, this Global Community Lab on Education and Training, we focus on innovative approaches to immersive learning. Our goal is to explore transformative potential of immersive learning environments, highlighting how metaverse technologies can democratize education, enhance training experiences, and foster collaborations across academic and corporate sectors while addressing implementation challenges and opportunities. As I mentioned, to coordinate today's session, several members of the programming committee will be assisting me. Some of the key roles I'd like to highlight today are our moderators, myself and Jamie Schwartz, our timekeeper today, Shah, thank you, Shah, Unanimous AI's representative, Chris Hornbostel, and our events director, Banijit Chowdhury. All the collective input will be used today to compile a post-roundtable report with appropriate attributions to be published after the Metaverse Safety Week 2024, concluding before the year's ends. Pardon me. As a special thank you, I'd like to shout out to our lead sponsor, Meta, who's sponsored this event for the fourth year in a row to ensure that it remains accessible and free for you all to participate. Meta have been building technologies that help people connect, find communities, and grow businesses, and is moving beyond 2D screens and into immersive experiences in the metaverse, helping to create the next evolution of social technology. Giving the power to build community and bring the world closer together, Meta's focuses are to bring the metaverse to life and to help people connect, find communities, and grow businesses. The metaverse is going to feel like a hybrid of today's online social experiences, sometimes expanded into 3 dimensions or projected even into the physical world. We'd also like to thank Unanimous AI for enabling us to use their intelligence platforms for our community lab. These are ThinkScape and Swarm, and we'll be having sessions in both of these. Unanimous AI amplifies the intelligence of networked human groups, allowing significantly more accurate forecasts and assessments, decisions, brainstorming, evaluation, prioritization, and insights. And we're delighted to partner with them today. We're truly grateful to the team of advisors, volunteers, and chairs for curating an impactful agenda, which are community partners and for their active contributions and observations. Throughout this week, we're going to be bringing together experts, thought leaders, and enthusiasts to explore and address the challenges and opportunities presented by the metaverse. So before I turn this over to the co-host today, Jamie Schwartz, let me share today's key objectives. Today, we're going to be mapping the immersive learning landscape, identifying and prioritizing key applications of the immersive technology field in education and training. We're also going to be helping to design immersive learning experiences, conceptualizing accessible and engaging metaverse-based learning environments for diverse learners. We're then going to be envisioning the future of the immersive education, strategizing implementation of immersive learning systems across academic and corporate sectors. So now let me hand over to Jamie.
Thank you, David. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jamie Schwarz. I'm a brand therapist, founder of Marked.art, and the author of the world's oldest NFT patent. My first career was as a creative for New York City ad agencies, where I worked with over 100 brands across all industries and discovered a passion for product development. And I spent the past 7 years building the company betterment platform Brand Therapy, which is a consulting platform for dozens of organizations, and I've co-founded 7 startups along the way. My first white paper on the implications of grouped asset NFTs on a co-creation economy was just published yesterday. And along with co-founding Parallel Worlds and the Teamflow Institute and serving on the board of Wayfinders on Hudson, I've been an XRSI advisor for the past 2 years, thanks to David, who introduced me to the organization and with whom I'm honored to know and sometimes work with. Like David, I'm excited to dive into today's program and around AI and XR and the implications of them for education and training. So right now I'm going to cover a short overview of our Education Day schedule. The entire program from about 11 minutes ago will last 3.5 hours with 2 breaks, one 10-minute break and 2 20-minute breaks. We plan to cover 3 objectives during this community lab, each via a separate deliberation method. We'll start with a 20-minute opening keynote, followed by a swarm session for Objective 1, then a community session for Objective 2, and end the lab with an engaging Thinkscape session to deliver Objective 3. Our special opening keynote will be from Dr. Angel Acosta. Angel holds his doctorate in curriculum and teaching from Teachers College, Columbia University. He's currently the director of the Garrison Institute's fellowship program and the founder and a principal of the Acosta Institute. After this opening, our first session will be guided by Fox Bonilla, and we will then collectively use interactive online discussion tool Swarm AI, one of our sponsors, to collaboratively identify and prioritize promising applications of immersive technologies in education and corporate training, exploring current and emerging approaches and their impacts. The second session is a community session introduced by Rahel Demont, focusing on creative, inclusive, engaging, and effective immersive learning environments in the metaverse and aiming to democratize access to quality education for diverse learners. She will then be followed by a complete panel that will each be talking for 5 minutes each. First, Ori Brathman from Insight Reality, then Eric Hoxton from Together Learning, then Dr. Sana Farid from Prince Sultan University, followed by Larry Cameron from Paradigm Intelligence. We're hoping Amy Peck is able to join us. Then followed by Chris Huer, who is the managing director for the Teamflow Institute, and then Caitlin Krause, founder and author and educator for MindWise. In our third and final session, we'll open with a talk from Reed Blackman, a former philosophy professor at my alma mater, Colgate University. He is the founder of and the CEO of Virtue, an AI ethical risk consultancy, and he's also the author of the book Ethical Machines. After Reed primes our brains for deep group discussion, we will be guided by Chris Horn-Bostel from Unanimous AI, who will use the Thinkscape Systems AI-backed collaborative conversation engine. This will allow us to collaboratively and collectively generate strategies for scaling immersive learning systems and addressing challenges and opportunities in creating global collaborative education ecosystems. Our session today is structured for maximum engagement and insight. Please use the community forum chat as much as you like. The ground rules, however, please keep your microphone muted unless you are speaking. Please use the virtual hand-raising feature to contribute. Please keep comments concise and within the allocated time. Please maintain respect and professionalism in discussions. And at any given time, as I said, please use the free chat feature for related resource or side comments. You are encouraged to be on video at all times. We really do want to see your faces. Communication is a lot of tone and body language, especially when delivering remarks. As an observer, you can use the raise your hand feature, as I mentioned, and also the Q&A section to share questions and concerns and comments at any time during the session. And we will do our best to reach and speak to all of them and respond via email later if we have to. We are using 2 profoundly novel technologies today to guide our discussion. In order to participate fully in the lab activities, you have to be using a laptop or PC as one of the technology platforms, i.e. Thinkscape is not yet compatible with mobiles or tablets. Lastly, many thanks to the individuals and representing organizations who are here today to actively contribute and observe. A full list of community partners and contributors is available on the Metaverse Safety Week website, metaversesafetyweek.org. So let's all together ensure that the metaverse remains a platform for freedom, equality, and respect for human rights. With that said, we can begin and welcome our keynote speaker for the day, Dr. Angel Acosta. For the last decade, Dr. Angel Acosta, I will applaud too, has worked to bridge the field of leadership, social justice, and mindfulness. He holds a doctorate degree in curriculum and teaching at Teachers College, Columbia University. He has supported more than educated leaders and their students by facilitating leadership trainings and creating pathways to higher education and designing dynamic learning experiences. His dissertation explored healing-centered education as a promising framework for educational leadership development, and that's how I first met him. After participating in the Mind and Life Institute Academy for Contemplative Leadership, Angel Acosta began consulting and developing learning experiences that weave leadership development with conversations about inequality and healing to support educational leaders through contemplative and restorative practices. As a former trustee for the Center of Contemplative Mind and Society, he participated as a speaker and discussant at the Asia Pacific Forum on holistic education in Kyoto, Japan. He designed the Contemplating 400 Years of Inequality experience, a contemplative journey to understand structural inequality. He's a proud member of the 400 Years of Inequality Project based at the New School, and lately he has become curious about the ways in which technology can be used as a force for advancing racial equity and dismantling structural inequality. Please welcome Dr. Angel Acosta.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here with you all. Just want to raise my hands. In an indigenous tradition, you raise your hands as a prayer to the organizers of this wonderful gathering. I'll be brief. I want to respect time, so I'll give you some very dense but simple thoughts for you all to chew on. The first is I want to play the role of trickster and push back a little bit on this idea of immersive learning. What we want to understand is that we're already in an immersive learning environment. As human beings, in the context of just our lived experience, we're in a dynamically immersive environment. Therefore, what we want to begin to do as educators is add augmented immersive environment as we're working with students, as we're working with faculty, as we're working with schools, is leveraging the already incredibly powerful immersive experience that human beings and students are in, and then having very powerful integrated practices and conversations that allow them to take the very sensorial experience and expertise that they have and bringing them into immersive spaces or bringing them into their relationship with artificial intelligence to develop an acute awareness of their reality. I know it's just not a big, but it's a big one, because if the illusion is that they're in an immersive environment, meaning they're submerged or uploaded into this extended space, I think sometimes we may make the mistake of subconsciously assume that I've left a part of me behind. And that is not the case. In fact, in virtual spaces, you talk to children, you talk to kids, you talk to gamers, and their voice, their vocalization is overexpressed, overemphasized. Their visual relationship with the screens is heightened. Their digitalization in terms of their use of whatever device, whether it be a keyboard or a game, gets heightened, right? So those are all sensorial and sensing skills that they've developed in the immersive environment as human beings on this precious planet. So from a design perspective, I think that there's a lot that we can do to subtly reframe how we help students enter immersive spaces. I think we've utilized how powerful that can be. Also, for those of you who are instructional designers out there, there's it's a beautiful quote around what we design designs us. What we design designs us. So there, I want to invite you to think about, as we're designing and preparing for leveraging immersive spaces, how the ways in which you're structuring the experience or designing the very technology, how is it shaping you? How is it shaping you? Because part of the first point I made around reframing immersive learning is that if we design experiences that are supposed to deepen our children, our students, and our teachers' visual experiences, sensorial sound and sound visual scapes, then we want to make sure that the ways in which people are behaving in the metaverse, that they feel fully human. That they feel fully human. Let me go deeper. Let me go deeper there. Why is it so important to feel fully human in the metaverse? One of the things that one third thing that I want to leave you with is, and this is not a technical question. This is not a technology assertion, or it's actually more practical. That from the perspective of designing immersive learning and augmented reality and AI education, that one of the biggest things you want to account for is fear. Fear and anxiety. Not just because our young people today across the globe, especially in the West, are experiencing higher levels of suicide, higher levels of depression, higher levels of anxiety. And so that's just a reality. So our children are entering these augmented learning spaces, these augmented realities with some pre-existing conditions. So you have to design for that. You have to account for that in your facilitation, in your design. But let me go a little deeper, since I've spent so much time this year working with educators, designing AI, designing GPTs. And this might apply more to adult learning than childhood learning across the child development pipeline. What I've noticed is that the fear, and this is in the context of adult education, the fear of artificial intelligence and the fear of feeling, what's the word? Feeling limited and unable to adapt to the metaverse actually creates the conditions for educators and adult learners to experience what in the math field was called math anxiety. So learning anxiety is more deleterious than we really know. For example, the classic studies by Vivaldi were, not Vivaldi, the classic studies in social psychology that kind of coined the concept of math anxiety studied that you could have two separate groups taking the same test. And let's say from a racial demographic standpoint, you had a group of African-American children or mixed people, children of color, and then you have a mix of white and Asian children. And if you just told the group of Latino and Black and Latino children that they were being tested and compared against the white and Asian counterpart group, the level of anxiety that they would experience in the test would impact scores. The data was ridiculous. And sample groups that did not do that, children tested comparatively pretty close. regardless of some of the ways that resources are distributed in the US to kind of privilege certain groups. So, what I mean there is that we want to develop very sensitive approaches to design learning environments that allow us to account for the possible experiencing of anxiety, but the already anxious laden environment that children and adults are in, especially in relation to emerging technology, because the more relaxed, the more centered learners can be entering immersive spaces, the more powerful the learning experience. So in closing, this brings me back to one of the last points around mindfulness and the role of mindfulness in contemplation of restorative practices, even yoga, that I think we have underutilized practices, embodiment practices, somatic practices, mindfulness practices before entering the virtual world. Before entering the virtual world, I want to invite you to spend even more time thinking about how you're designing the warm-up, how you're designing the warm-up, how you're designing the pre-engagement, the pre-augmentation. Because what we're finding is that when we're able to engage in mindfulness practice before entering an immersive space or even working with artificial intelligence, we actually allow the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, to cool, to calm, and be spacious, and be spacious, and be spacious. And then the last, the last piece is, as you all know, in our attention economy, which does a wonderful job at pulling our attention in all different directions, most of it to consume and support our wonderful economies. But we know that scattered attention is deleterious to robust long-term learning. So one of the last piece I want to tell you is, as you're designing experiences, you want to try to support students and faculty to cultivate a robust sense of contemplative attention. And that's connected to the mindfulness. That's connected to the people. The more we can help people and children in particular before they enter immersive spaces to develop a sense of clarity, a sense of centeredness, an ability to hold something for an extended period of time when they go into immersive spaces, when they're interacting with exponential technologies like artificial intelligence, there's a centeredness there. There's a centeredness there, right? And from that groundedness, we can navigate uncertainty. We can adapt faster. We can be a little bit more agile. We can deal with the ways in which the next several decades are going to look radically different than the last 100 years. So I leave you with that task of subtly reframing immersive learning to augmented immersive learning, because we're already in an immersive environment as human beings with the thousands of photons that are and light particles that are coming in my eyes right now, making even my perception of this Zoom possible, and the binary code that are, matrix-like, not just background, but the technology that facilitates this. I mean, it's a remarkable. This is immersive. And then two, just making sure that you understand that what you designs you. What you designs you. And that there's this transpersonal relationship between matter and subject. If you want to check out Philosophy from New Materialism, Karen Barad, very rich, beautiful theory around our relationship to matter and our relationship to things, and that there might be something a lot more dynamic happening. And I don't want you to take that for granted. Account for anxiety, both pre-immersive environment and in the immersive world. And maybe in closing, actually just really thinking about when instruction ends and people are coming out of immersive environments, coming out of AI related education, what's the container? Do you do another mindfulness practice to come back in, to re-enter? Do you have what kind of post immersive environment integration session are you having? So, with that being said, I want to respect time and want to thank you for listening and just remind you that it is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity we have to be alive in this point in our human species where we've never been here before. So, what a miracle, what an opportunity, what a privilege to even face the very challenges that are coming ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Acosta. Every time I hear you, it is always new, amazingly. And I hope everybody got just a small taste of what Angel is talking about when he talks about healing-centered education. You can learn more about his work at theacostainstitute.com. And now to move on to our next speaker, David will introduce Fox Bonilla.
Yes, thank you, Angel. That was absolutely fascinating. So our next speaker today is going to be Fox Bonilla, who will be setting the stage for our first objective, mapping the immersive learning landscape, identifying and prioritizing key applications of emerging technology in education and training. Fox Bonilla is CEO and founder of the Harbinger Creative. Dennis Fox Bonilla is a results-focused leader in technology development, strategy, and implementation with a proven track record of innovation and expertise in spatial computing and data visualization. Over 25 years, Fox has developed and patented cutting-edge VR technology, created space mission planning software for NASA, developed decision support systems for the Department of Defense, and has served in roles supporting the committees advising the US President Barack Obama about options for future human spaceflight. Mr. Bonilla is a company founder and technologist who thrives in rapid problem-solving environments. In addition to his CEO duties at Harbinger, Mr. Bonilla serves as an adjunct faculty in the School of Arts, Media and Engineering at Arizona State University. Fox also provides insight and guidance regarding XR and spatial computing industry best practices as the co-chair of Privacy and Safety Working Group at XRSI. Mr. Bonilla is regularly featured as an on-air talent throughout global news media as a subject matter expert on AI and immersive systems. So with that right up, over to you, Fox.
Thanks, David. So I'm going to provide a few examples of systems that I've helped develop and platforms that I've contributed to over the past 25 years or so that range from long-duration mission planning software to training high schoolers on future workforce opportunities. So let me share this screen so we can get started. So first thing I want to talk about really is around emotional intelligence training. I was a part of 3 different projects. I'll mention them briefly. One was with the USC Shoah Foundation around storytelling, and it had to do with a gentleman who had survived a concentration camp during the Holocaust. And so the immersive environment is set around you almost like a type of living museum in which the storyteller is actually telling you and pointing out the different areas in the camp in which horrible things happen and memories were formed during childhood. That one is meant really to create empathy and insight around the types of horrors that humans kind of let happen, and to be thoughtful about how they happen at all. The second example was a trainer for the American Association of University Women. It was shown off at the White House, was featured in the Wall Street Journal. What that was a training simulator that had about an hour's worth of content in total, which amounted to about 3 or 4 options at each milestone in a conversation. And the trainer was meant to train women on negotiating higher salaries in order to close the pay gap. The third example was an emotional training simulator using virtual reality for accountants at the organization Grant Thornton. accountants aren't necessarily taught emotional training. That's not what a CPA's background is in. And so what that emotional training simulator was for was really to provide opportunities to go through a difficult conversation, and not have to worry about answering incorrectly, and providing opportunities for the learner to try the simulation over and over and over so that they could gather different perspectives on how a difficult conversation might be maneuvered. Each one of these, again, like I said, had hours, from an hour to several hours worth of content, but the simulation itself usually only lasts about 10 to 15 minutes. Each reality or each sequence, each path only lasts about that long. And so you're invited to try these simulations over and over again using virtual reality. So as far as emotional intelligence training, the idea here is that XR technologies can offer immersive scenarios that enhance self-awareness, empathy, conflict resolution, stress management, and communication skills through interactive role-playing and realistic virtual environments. The next thing I want to talk about is similar, but not quite the same. Got to work on a de-escalation set of sequences for Axon. And Axon makes the cameras, and their focus really is on improving the state of the art in terms of non-lethal tools for law enforcement. And so what this was, we took on the work. One of the things that we decided was that we would not include in this simulation any weaponry. We said, if it includes guns at all, we're not interested. And so we found a place that was very useful for us to better understand how to de-escalate different scenarios. One might be, for example, a person that is hard of hearing. How are they communicating? How is the law enforcement official communicating and empathizing with that individual? Someone with PTSD, someone with Alzheimer's, right? Someone that might be on drugs. Traditionally, police has been less than empathetic toward folks in those high stress environments. And so the idea here was to allow the law enforcement individual to put on a headset and go through these sequences over and over and over again. And the sequence essentially tells you you've done something horribly incorrect if for any reason you think to reach for your weapon. The simulator basically breaks and resets and tells you this is not the path. And so as far as de-escalation is concerned, things to think about, right? Simulating high pressure situations to train personnel in maintaining calmness, providing scenarios to practice effective communication and de-escalation techniques. And this doesn't have to just do with law enforcement, right? This can do with this can impact a variety of types of jobs. Enhancing situational awareness and decision-making skills in dynamic environments. Training on recognizing and managing implicit biases through immersive experiences, and improving crisis intervention skills through realistic simulation. So rather than, right now what happens is that there are really non-scalable solutions for role play. They happen throughout a lot of different industries. The problem is that they're quite expensive, and so that limits the amount of participants that can learn from that role play. When you are using immersive technologies like augmented reality and virtual reality, you have an opportunity there to provide those tools to many, many, many more people within an organization. The idea here is that it's a scalable solution for de-escalation training. The third example of some stuff I've contributed to, this was a long duration space mission planning software for NASA. And what this involved was essentially taking high resolution, high fidelity simulators and making their data available to a standard laptop. So you would not need a supercomputer to run a NASA simulation, but it was even more than just running the simulation. It was participating in a conversation during the entire length of a mission. So let's say you are responsible for stacking a rocket, preparing it on the launch pad, and then actually launching it to the International Space Station, where some component of it may dock with the International Space Station. That is an incredibly complex set of milestones that require hundreds of people to be in the loop. So the idea with this, which was called the Distributed Observer Network, was to provide a platform where anyone at NASA with the correct access could log into a virtual environment, much like the Matrix, right? Pull up the vehicle assembly building, the entire CAD accurate facility would basically be built around you. And then you would have a variety of simulations that were high fidelity that you could pick from or just move around the environment. The idea there was that it fit about 256 users at a time. It was incredible to see. I remember being at Johnson Space Center and just seeing a field of folks. There were about 120 people logged into the system going through a 6-hour scenario, a 6-hour simulation in real time from beginning to end inside of the Distributed Observer Network and having a conversation, pointing things out to each other, having an opportunity to kind of play out a type of reality in real time with the participants that would actually be there when the simulation becomes a real mission. This was a really unique way to have a diverse set of perspectives about a mission in real time without the very, very large cost of running the actual mission through and potentially having it not go well. So there's a lot to be said of using simulation in multi-user environments, even for extended periods of time. Some missions are multi-day. You could literally load up the simulation, have it be consistently running in the background, and join it at any given time during the simulation run of a multi-day run. So for mission planning, XR technologies allow for training in simulated low, no bandwidth, and high latency environments, emergency procedures in isolated settings, teamwork and collaboration skills through virtual missions, spatial orientation in complex vehicles and environments, and pre-visualization of fit checking operations for mission preparedness. Now, those don't necessarily have to be NASA specific. If you think about missions as they relate to organizations you all have worked in, think about the simulations that could last several hours that would inform those organizations on maybe how to do those things better, how to improve communication during those missions. The next one is around workforce development. This was a standalone application where different environments were created to introduce high school students to future workforce capabilities. In this particular environment, it was around a electrical harness that needed to be applied to a piece of aerospace hardware. This aerospace hardware is, millions of dollars. It's not something you'd let a 15-year-old kid play with, unless, of course, it was inside of a simulation. And so the idea here is that these kids are in a high school. They're given a headset. They are allowed to pick the types of futuristic jobs they want to try out, and they can throw stuff around. They can try to complete the training that's in headset. The other one was the other environment was a semiconductor fabrication plant. This is a place where you need highly educated individuals working with potentially caustic materials. Not a place that you would send a 15 or 16-year-old to. These are clean rooms. Most of these kids have no idea what a clean room looks like. And so being able to show them what that kind of environment is like to work in, surrounded by robots creating microchips, then suddenly gives them a perspective that they may not ever have gotten. This is not the kind of place that you could take kids on a field trip to, unless, of course, you were in an immersive simulated environment. And so the idea here is that XR technologies offer hands-on job experience, interactive skill development modules, safety training, remote training capabilities for workforce development across various industries, and access to sensitive areas through the use of digital twins in environmental simulations. And then the last example here is around environmental design and planning. The idea is that a major aerospace company had a milestone meeting with NASA. The meeting itself was worth tens of millions of dollars if they were able to pass with flying colors. And the purpose was to describe the notional design of a new space station. And so how do you do that, right? It was a very long meeting that involved lots of PhDs describing the kinds of facilities that you would want to incorporate into a new space station. So it's great to hear about that for several hours, but you can only visualize it so well. So at the end of the meeting, the cherry on top was to actually have the NASA personnel walk through the environment. And so collaborating with about 15 aerospace engineers and a couple of astronauts, my team was able to develop down to the inch all the sections within the module that would be necessary to run scientific experiments and to keep astronauts alive on a space station. And so the NASA personnel puts on the headset, they can traverse the entire environment. There is voiceover, which happened to be generated through artificial intelligence, that allows that participant to understand, again, down to the inch, what might be contained within this design of a spacecraft. Again, the alternative is what? To build a mock-up maybe in a warehouse somewhere and have them walk through the mock-up. The mock-up itself probably being a one-off and costing you millions of dollars to build, as opposed to building it within a simulated environment. And so the affordances here are XR technologies enable visualization of architectural designs, simulation of environmental impacts, collaboration with stakeholders, testing of building layouts, and enhancement of urban planning processes for sustainable environmental design and planning. So those are a few examples that hopefully get you thinking about the questions that we're going to ask you next.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Fox. That was absolutely fascinating. It's something that we've been working on around the world in careers exposure, the accessibility of this, the flexibility of the environments, the ability to put people into environments that they would never otherwise be able to access, can encourage enthusiasm for job choices that might not otherwise have occurred to potential employees, and then access to the training that's needed to prepare them for that work. So these are amazing examples and great to hear about. And you've really prepared us for our next section, which is where things get kind of interactive, because we're going to be all together taking part in a collaborative exercise by responding to a strategically curated set of questions via the Swarm platform that we're going to be using today, which was developed by Unanimous AI. This innovative approach combines real-time human insights with AI algorithms inspired by nature's swarm intelligence to amplify collective decision-making. At any time, none of your personal data is going to be collected. It's just going to be aggregated output from your collective decisions in this exercise. So this is going to be an example of collective intelligence gathering, which will be recorded and published in a lab report. But as I say, none of your personal information from this, just the overall exercise. So before we begin this swarm section, let's just do a quick review of what we're going to be doing today. So I'd like each of you to join the swarm link, which is just being shared in the chat by our colleague Bannet. Let's just see whether it's in the chat. Not there yet. So Anna, if you could share the link to the swarm, it's a swarm exercise. And then when that link is there, you're going to be able to take part using either your laptop or a mobile device, but laptop is best. And today we'll combine your input with the Swarm AI technologies to gather your insights and unlock the collective intelligence of this entire 40-strong group today. Our goal is to converge on the best possible answer for each question by combining the knowledge, wisdom, insights, and intuition of the full group. When you put your mouse next to the spinning puck that you're going to see on your screen, your mouse cursor will turn into a magnet. Your magnet's green, everyone else's magnet is gold, so you know which one is yours. You then use your magnet to pull on the puck in the direction of the answer that you believe is the most appropriate answer to the question. So you pull the answer for questions that you believe in, but remain open to compromise if you think it's appropriate, so that the answer is arrived at in time. So if you feel that the puck is moving in the direction of an answer that isn't your first choice, but nearer to your second choice, then consider going with that option. You don't have to. The closer your magnet is to the puck, the stronger its pull. So you can be a little bit competitive and a little bit strategic with the way that you do this and give yourself a bit more voice. Keep in mind that you'll need to pull continuously with your magnet during each answer. You can't just start a pull and then take your cursor away. You need to keep pulling. It's like a tug of war. If you are not pulling on the part of your magnet, you'll have no impact on or influence over the outcome. Sorry. Again, our goal is to converge on the best possible answer for each question by combining the knowledge, wisdom, insights, and intuition of the full group. Now, given some of you have already used the tool last year, while many of you are new, we've decided to do a couple of warm-up questions before we start the actual questions, just to help you prepare and ensure that you're all ready to go for the real questions of substance. So remember, so we'll give you about 10 seconds to start. And the first question that we're going to give you is, what is the most important invention of the 19th century? You're going to get how many choices have we got here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 choices. So that could be the telephone, the steam engine, the electric light bulb, the typewriter, the battery, or the photography. So when this gets started, I think that the timer is starting. So you can now start pulling on the magnet. There we go, and we can see it moving. We can see it moving. There's a strong, strong move in the direction of the electric light bulb, but I can also see some people pulling in the direction of the battery. Oh, and even photography. I love the competition here. Now remember, when we get to these kind of impasses, then do be prepared to go with your second answer so that we don't end up not settling on an outcome. But I do love the degree of competition and strain that we're seeing here. We're still moving towards the light bulb, but some people are just not giving up, not giving up. We're definitely closest to light bulb. Getting there. Oh, nearly there. Some people are going for their second choice. That's good. In the spirit of compromise. There we go. Light bulb. Fantastic. So that's great. Now we're going to do a second practice question. You don't, I get this one. So the second one is, what's the most important invention of the 20th century? So it's just about to appear, but what you're going to see is the personal computer, the radio, antibiotics, the television, airplanes, or duct tape. I think that your answer is probably going to be defined by what you do for a living. I'm sure that a lot of engineers would probably end up saying duct tape just by default, but others of you may disagree. So let's see what direction we're going in now. Oh, very, very rapid move in the direction of antibiotics here. I can see that some people were up for the personal computer, which I get, but it helps to be still alive when you when you open your personal computer, and antibiotics are good for that. Brilliant. Well, you guys have really got the hang of this one. So let's get into some of the main questions now that you've got the hang of it. So the first question that we're going to go for is, which immersive learning application shows the most promise for widespread adoption? Now, the choices that we're going to have here are virtual labs and simulators, collaborative learning spaces, immersive assessment tools, mixed reality tutorials, and AI-guided practice modules. So just read that again. So which immersive learning application shows the most promise for widespread adoption, mass adoption? Is that virtual labs and simulations, collaborative learning spaces, immersive assessment tools, mixed reality tutorials, or AI-guided practice modules? Oh, we have contention here. Oh, most of it seems to be between mixed reality tutorials and virtual labs and simulations. But I can see people pulling in the direction of collaborative learning spaces and AI-guided practice modules. At the moment, it's hard to say, but it looks like mixed reality tutorials is kind of winning slightly. Now, remember what I said, if you don't think you're going to be able to get to your first choice answer, but the main pull is in the direction of your second choice, then feel free to adhere to a little bit of normative group behavior and join the mass. We know what you were originally after, and we'll note it, because that's the beauty of this system. It does note all of the potential outcomes that people were going for. Mixed reality tutorials. Now, this is an interesting answer because it has been shown that people are capable of retaining information at a rate of sometimes 4 times as high as other forms of online learning when it's mixed reality. So this next one, what types of learning content is most suited to immersive delivery? complex 3D concepts in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and maths, hands-on procedural training, soft skills and communication, language and cultural learning, or emergency response scenarios. So what type of learning content is most suited for immersive delivery? Complex 3D concepts in science and technology, hands-on procedural training, soft skills and communication, interpersonal skills, language and cultural learning, or emergency response scenarios. This is interesting. We're seeing a lot of people pulling in the direction of hands-on procedural training, and I'm a bit biased in this direction because I do a lot of work in this field, particularly high-risk procedural training for engineering and such. So people certainly seem to be going for that, but let's not ignore the fact that some people were pulling in the direction of emergency response and soft skills and communication, which are equally valid. Okay, so our next question. How automated should AI-guided learning be versus teacher-guided learning? How automated should it be? So should it be fully teacher-guided? Should it be mostly teacher-guided with a bit of AI support? Should it be an equal balance of both? Or mostly AI-guided with a bit of teacher oversight, or fully AI automated? You can see that we're moving gradually from one extreme to the other. So what are your thoughts on this? So as you can see here, we've got a balance going from AI guides the whole thing to teacher guides the whole thing to an equal balance between the two. Let's see what you think. Ooh, this is interesting. Okay, so we're getting a pull towards mostly teacher guided with AI support. A very strong pull. Some people are pulling in the direction of mostly AI guided with teacher oversight. Oh, we're nearly there. There we go. Mostly teacher guided with AI support. So you all still agree that the teacher should be the one who has the whip hand here and the AI should be the assistant. Interesting answer. Okay, what long-term effect of immersive learning in education is the most concerning? And that could be detachment from reality, physical health impacts, resource strain over traditional teaching, over-reliance on virtual experiences, or a digital divide amongst students, amongst the haves and have-nots, people who can access this kind of immersive learning technologies and those who can't. And that could be down to areas, individuals, regions of the world. There's a lot of digital inequality around the world, but this is the questions. Is the most concerning effect of immersive learning a detachment from reality, the physical health impacts which are implied by using immersive learning rather than standard learning, a resource drain from traditional teaching methods, over-reliance on virtual experiences, or the digital divide between students that have and or don't have access to these technologies? Go ahead. Rapid movement towards digital divide among students. That's a very valid concern. The fact is that in large parts of the first world, we are under the impression that we all have access to this kind of technology, which is simply not the case, even in first world economies. So that's a really valid point. Okay, so which sector will be the strongest driver of immersive learning innovation in the next year? K-12 education, what we would call in the UK, say primary to secondary education, higher education, corporate training, medical education, military training, or professional certifications. That might be vocational training, like job skills. So which sector will be the strongest driver of immersive learning innovation in the next year? K-12 and school education, higher education, college and university, corporate training, medical education, military training, or professional certifications? Okay. What direction are we looking at here? Moving in the direction of medical training, bit of military training here. Some people pulling on corporate, but no, it seems to be moving rapidly in the direction of medical education. Oh, we're nearly there. Oh, I see you steering it back into the center. You guys are getting real pros at this. Medical education is an interesting one because it's a high-risk form of training, and it's hard to access, particularly in surgery. Things like cadavers to work on, which can be worked on in virtual and augmented reality and actually behave as if they're alive, unlike cadavers, which are not. So that's a good answer. So what features, what feature matters most for immersive learning effectiveness? And that could be interactive feedback, real-time collaboration, realistic simulations, adaptive difficulty according to the capabilities of the individual, and progress tracking. So what feature matters most for immersive learning effectiveness? Interactive feedback, real-time collaboration, realistic simulations, adaptive difficulty, or progress tracking. And of course, the last one that I forgot to say, because it was on the next page, is multi-sensory engagement. And that's one advantage, of course, that XR has over standard audiovisual learning like we're looking at the moment. Evenly spaced. Oh, we're moving in the direction of interactive live feedback. Oh, never get pulled into multi-sensory engagement. It's all to play for. There's some stubborn holdouts for real-time collaboration. I admire your tenacity. This is a real tug of war. Remember, if it looks like it's moving in the direction of your secondary choice, then, let it happen. But, we're moving away. We're moving away. Back up to real-time collaboration. Oh, actually, we're moving in an entirely different direction now.
As we're going to this wonderful fight right here, I want to remind the audience that they are totally free to speak up during this time. Although these magnets are anonymous, you should feel free to add any points you want on any of these specific points. And we did get a brain freeze.
We did get a brain freeze, which means that we were undecided. And Jamie, you're absolutely right. Anybody who wants to speak out, please do so. Or if you're uncomfortable doing that, leave your comments in the comments section. But we'd rather hear your voice. Okay, so finally, well, no, it's not the last question, but what strategy would most improve the accessibility of immersive education? This is something which really comes down to what we were talking about before, the haves, the have-nots, the people who are comfortable with accessing this or not. So the possible answers could be partnering with tech companies for subsidies in order to help to address the digital divide and affordability, or sharing VR resources amongst schools, or using low-cost, scalable VR solutions. And finally, a government funding for schools to adopt VR. So those are the 4 answers that we can have here. What strategy would most improve accessibility of immersive education, particularly in terms of the affordability and helping to address the digital divide? So partnering with tech companies for subsidies, sharing VR resources amongst schools, using low-cost, scalable VR solutions, or government funding for schools to adopt VR. There we go. Using low-cost, scalable VR solutions, which is actually a solution which we had adopted a number of years ago to use low-cost mobile phones during COVID epidemic so that thousands of people could access VR or rather immersive environments without requiring VR headsets. So that has been employed and it does work. So now this is the second to last question in the swarm session. It's a 2-part question. In the first part, we're going to collectively come to a conclusion in a percentage range. And in the second part, we'll be asked to further drill down to the exact percentage. So we'll start with a broad percentage, and then within that, we're going to drill down to a more accurate percentage. Okay, so a bit like the hour hand and then the minute hand, I guess you would compare this to. And the question is, what percentage of current immersive learning projects achieve intended outcomes? So what proportion of current immersive learning projects actually achieve their intended outcomes? What do you think? Now we're going to be going through a number of rounds for this. So we'll start with the 20% ranges from 0 to 20 right up to 80 to 100%. So what percent of current immersive learning projects do you think actually achieve their intended outcomes? I think we've got a good audience here for actually having seen this one way or the other. We have a bias between optimism and pessimism here, and it's fairly evenly divided. We're certainly looking at closest at the moment to the 20 to 40% range, although some people are holding out for 40 to 60%. Again, feel free to raise your voice and speak up on this one or put in your comments, unless you're using both hands to hold onto your magnet. Oh, we're moving in there. There we go, 20 to 40%. Okay, good. So we're getting an idea that it's between low and medium. So let's have a think about, okay, within that, let's narrow it down. So we can go 20, 25, 30, 35, or 40%. Are we at the higher end of this or the lower end of this? And again, we have a balance between the very low end and the very high end, although we seem to be erring on the middle side. Lots of competition. Oh, a sudden move towards 30%. Well, we're definitely looking at 30%. Well, this is good. This is more
Wonderful
optimism.
version of compromise here, where we're seeing nobody was going to get 20 or 40, and naturally the magnets went up to 30.
This is the wonderful nature of this swarm approach. We get to see how people adapt. So I believe, Anna, if I'm not wrong, then we should actually be narrowing it down still further within this. Not 100% sure though. Perhaps not.
Nope, that's actually complete, and we're able to run an interpolation that will give us an exact percentage of where we landed on that. But yes,
Thank you
so
very much.
it'll be a little more granular than 30%.
Great stuff. That was Chris Hornbostel there, who's actually one of the developers of this system. And we'll be hearing from Chris later on when we go into another example of these systems that he's created. So we will then, thank you very much for clarifying on that, Chris. So our final question then is going to be, which immersive learning application should be the lowest or highest priority? Now, this is an elimination question with 4 rounds. We'll eliminate the lowest important question with the first 3 rounds. And in the last round, we'll have 2 options left. We'll change the question to which immersive learning application should be the highest priority. So we'll start with the lowest priority to eliminate those. And then we'll move to, okay, from the ones that are remaining, which should be the highest priority. So those, before this appears, are virtual laboratories, team-based learning spaces, skills assessment tools, AI coaching systems, or mixed reality field trips. Now, there's arguments for all of these, and against them. So it'll be interesting to see where you go. Remember, this is elimination. We'll eliminate the first 2, which should be the lowest priority. And then once we've eliminated them, we'll move to the highest priority. To get rid of. In the direction of team-based learning experiences or skills assessment tools. Team-based learning spaces or skills assessment tools is equally divided at this stage, but it seems to be moving a little bit in the direction of skills assessment tools. And that's where the consensus is forming. So it would appear that the consensus is that as a skills assessment tool, these immersive learning applications probably have the least utility, maybe at this stage.
Now, since
Okay.
we still have about 10 minutes left in this session, we would love to make sure that the audience can share a couple of their convictions that they've had. I was just wondering if anybody would speak up to what you thought was the one that stuck with you most. What was the one of these questions that made you want to actually ask a little further, as we have a wonderful dais here?
Mhm.
You don't even need to raise your hand. You can just speak. Go for it, Arjun.
Yeah, I was looking at the question about teacher guided versus AI guided. And one factor that really felt missing, though it might kind of go into both of them, is the entire concept of user guided learning, or student guided, right? Or
Mhm.
student centric. And I like for me, the reason why I veered towards teacher guided to answer that was because I thought the teacher for now has better ability to understand a student on a soft level.
Mhm.
But that still felt lost in translation.
That is a very, very good point, and particularly in this era of artificial intelligence in education, the concept of flipping the classroom and having the student guide the teacher, it really demonstrates knowledge and understanding of what could information which could easily be gathered through AI, but can only comprehension can only really be accurately demonstrated through taking that knowledge or information and showing that you can comprehend it, so that as you learn by teaching. And any of us who have been teachers know that you really thoroughly learn a subject once you've taught it. So encouraging your classes to do that. So extending that to artificial intelligence or even virtual reality where it's guided by the student, not by the teacher, is actually a very, very good idea, and not one which really came across in the options. So thank you for that. We'll definitely add that. So I believe we should be or eliminating the next one, the next least important from this. So now that we've eliminated one, we're going to move to the next. So which is the next immersive learning application that should be the lowest priority? Team-based learning spaces, training of the workforce, virtual laboratories, or mixed reality interaction? What is the lowest priority? Ready. Team-based learning spaces. It's interesting, and it's a strong answer. Of course, it's to be expected. I think that was the second choice that was emergent from the previous one. So that is interesting. What I want you to remember, though, is that social learning is a very important means of learning. And so it can be of benefit, but maybe out of the options that we had here, that wasn't the one that struck you guys as the most important, which is totally understandable. So now that we've eliminated it down to the three remaining options, you're going to get to choose which you think is the most important. Now you're going to get two options at this. So out of these remaining three, which do you think? Oh, it's still saying lowest priority, Barney. Are we still, or Chris, are we
So
still looking at
we'll come
lowest
to the
priority?
most in the last question once we only have two options remaining.
Ah, I see. And then we go for the highest priority after we've
Yes.
eliminated them. I understand. Apologies. Okay. So which is the remaining one that we're going to eliminate before we choose the one that's most important? Mixed reality interaction. You notice how much more quickly this happens when the options are more limited, which makes sense. Okay, now we are down to two options. And out of these, you're going to choose the one that you think is the most important. So we're switching to the highest priority, not the lowest priority. And at the moment, even without a question, everybody seems to like C. Oh, we're losing our puck. Oh no, it's back. Right, there we go. Which a learning application should be the most or the highest priority? Remember that this is separated not just by these two options, but by how much you think it is should be the most highest priority. By a lot, by a little, training of workforce or virtual laboratories. Happening. So virtual laboratories by a little, but there seems to be a movement in the direction of training of the workforce by a lot. but for training of the workforce by a little. There we go. Training of the workforce by a lot. There we go. Now, is that our final question, guys? Or is that or do we have one remaining?
That was fine.
So that was the final one? Okay, well, look, thank you very much, everybody. And I've got a comment below here from Maria. In healthcare scenarios, team-based learning is important for safety training, like with the team steps training through AHRQ. So yes, and the ranked order is certainly proving to be popular with everybody. So that's really interesting. And thank you so much for your participation. This is not just a jolly for us, okay? This information is going to be gathered and analyzed in detail using this AI system. And then from that is going to be shared, remember, not with any of your personal details, but the information on what you're prioritizing here is going to be shared as part of this overall study. So this has been really, really effective. So I'm going to pass this back. I think we are we've got a break for the next 10 minutes. So it gives you a chance to get a cup of tea, have a refreshment break. And then when we come back, Jamie will be opening for us.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in 10. Well, welcome back, everybody. We will now resume the 5th annual Metaverse Safety Weeks Edition Roundtable discussion, and this was focused on the future of education and training today. I'm Jamie Schwartz, and I'll be your moderator for this open community discussion. This section includes a 10-minute set of remarks from Rahel Demont, followed by a set of 5-minute presentations, each from distinguished community members to shed light on designing inclusive, immersive learning experiences. You're encouraged to raise your hand and add your own remarks at the end, time permitting. I believe we'll have time, so we really do want you to add comments in the chat, discuss amongst yourselves, and then, of course, let's get into it when everybody gets their turn. And then once we get into this, we're going to review this thematic discussion. So let's begin with our panel where we're going to dive into conceptualizing immersive learning environments that are accessible, engaging, and effective for diverse learners. We're going to brainstorm on breaking down barriers and democratizing access to high-quality educational experiences in the metaverse. This segment will feature expert-led discussions on breaking down barriers and democratizing access to high-quality educational experiences in the metaverse. The aim is to generate innovative ideas for inclusive, immersive learning designs that cater to a wide range of learning needs and styles. So like I said, this is a discussion. We do want to see the chat lively, and we want to make sure that you save a lot of ideas for the end. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Rahel Demont, founder of XR Bootcamp. Rahel Demont, co-founder of XR Bootcamp, is a global academy for XR development. Since its inception in 2020, Rahel has shaped the careers of thousands and integrated a supportive worldwide alumni network. Under her leadership, XR Bootcamp champions the XR creators community, providing an open platform for knowledge exchange through free lectures by senior industry professionals and collaborative co-development groups. Together with XRSI and our CEO and founder, Kavya Perlman, Rahel spearheaded the Beyond Inclusion Initiative, a scholarship tech career matchmaking program aimed at democratizing access to XR education. Meta, Unity, and JFF funded this initiative. In 2024, the XR Guild awarded Rahel the Ethical Value Award. Please help me welcome Rahel to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. I just need 1 second to change my background. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. Awesome. Yeah, so I'm the co-founder of XR Bootcamp. Hello, everyone. We are a virtual online training academy and also a network for virtual reality, mixed reality software development. And yeah, I would just like to share first our experience with making the XR industry more diverse and more exclusive. And I'm going to share my screen now. Awesome. Okay. So who are we and what are we doing? So basically, we started XR Bootcamp in 2020. So that's almost 5 years ago. And we started with the vision in mind of democratizing virtual reality software development and making the opportunities that XR tech offers to many, many developers to democratize that to everyone and to make especially these opportunities available to everyone. So, and for us, how are we doing that? So one of our DNA is that we are only hiring very successful and very professional XR trainers. So everyone who is like training for us and teaching for us is already having won awards or is working at a very big studio and is basically very experienced in XR development. So here you can see some of the games, some of the XR experiences that our trainers have done. But of course, there is one big problem in the whole XR industry. And that is, of course, like any other tech industry, that is not very diverse, especially in the leadership. So together with Kavya and together with the Cyber XR Coalition, we've actually looked at many, many studies together, and we've seen that the XR industry is not very diverse, and that we want together to start a program to make the industry more diverse. And that's how our initiative Beyond Inclusion was born. And it's basically a scholarship program to enable anyone from underrepresented backgrounds to participate in our coding bootcamp. And that's a 4-month-long coding software bootcamp where people can participate online and get afterwards career services and get placed into jobs. So it's all about like having mobilized XR communities to get together and also to help each other to really make the industry more diverse and more inclusive. And also to educate our students about the different standards for inclusion, ethics, privacy, and safety that exist. I'd just like to give you a little insight into our program, into our biggest program, the Coding Bootcamp. It's basically in the beginning. Everyone can take just to find out if you like actually doing XR development. Everyone can do a free C# course. And that means that you can basically take a test as well and get a little bit used to this whole coding programming work and see if you like it or not. And if you like it, then of course you can apply and move further into the XR Foundations, where you learn everything about C# and Unity development. And then you move on to the XR prototyping stage. And that's basically the most important stage because it's all about building your portfolio, which you will then further on need for your career services, for your for applying to jobs, because all the recruiters, they are basically looking at your portfolio. And these are some of the jobs that our graduates have done. Like they're working at Meta, at Amazon, at famous studios like Polyarc, at Salesforce, at Merces Technology. So I think you have in lots of different job titles. As you can imagine, the XR industry is very diverse in its setup in terms of job industry and titles you can do. And and this was, for example, our first cohort, our first Beyond Inclusion cohorts, which we graduated with all of these different careers that people have taken. And we are still doing the Beyond Inclusion scholarships. So if you know anyone who wants to take the next step and get a very foundational education in terms of XR software development, then please share this link about the Beyond Inclusion scholarship. And right now we are funded by Unity and by the Jobs for the Future Foundation. And also for the reporting for them, for the 2023 cohorts, we've actually asked our students, our graduates, to share some of their success stories. And here on the left, you can definitely see that there's really amazing things that happened in terms of salary increase, in terms of jobs they've taken afterwards. There's freelancers who are getting better jobs now. There's people who are now directors of their own VR programs at universities after taking the bootcamp. So we are very proud of the successes we've seen so far. And yeah, and I would also like to actually invite Ferhan, my co-founder, very quickly on stage and talk a little bit about like actually the prototypes that some of our students have done and which are also very and now like to go to this inclusive design perspective from a different angle, from the experiences, VR experiences and apps itself. Yeah, because there's lots of hacks we've done. And there are lots of prototypes which are also very inclusive in its design.
Thank you, Rahel. Hello everyone, I'm Farhan. So we did actually a huge effort on the Beyond Inclusion side, but even in one cohort, we people create over 170 prototypes or MVPs in one cohort. Like it's like almost like a 4 months program, but we had also people from like over 19 countries in the Beyond Inclusion, but we thought, what if we actually bring it to the global, right? So how we can make it almost like you probably know Global Game Jam, so it's basically all around the world. It's almost like a global event happening on different destinations. So we have actually come up with this vision of how we can create XR AI combined effort for the hackathons, and it's happening all around the world. This year we started with 4 destinations, and now we are aiming to have at least 10 destinations, and we have reached over 500 hackers and over 120 projects being created in less than 48 hours. So this is a very interesting hackathon because this is probably the first ever hackathon that we combine XR, camera access, which I know that you will talk about, and you are talking about that in this event, and also AI combined together. You'll probably see a lot of announcements coming from the platforms, and we managed to create first ever Unity plugin that actually understands what's going on around you and then creates some kind of like a AI integration there. And the hackers had the chance to use that, so we can see the potential use cases or safety threats and everything that we would see. And then you will see a few examples here, just to maybe give you a little bit of perspective. I will not go in every one of them, but maybe some spotlights. The first one is actually using a segmentation model from Meta. So it's a SAM, segment anything model, and it actually turns any digital comic into a spatial comic reader, and it becomes like almost like a spatial comic reader that you can use on a park, on a room. We have actually very interesting sign language game, chess game, that you actually play the chess with your sign language hand gestures. All these hand gestures are being not only tracked by hand tracking of Meta, but also they used their own machine learning model to train every joint of the finger to make sure that it's hyper like a precision from a sign language perspective. And the chameleon, the last one, you see this cock there is actually a real object. So literally you can use the camera and then take the color of whatever physical object that you have and bring that color to VR. This gives a huge opportunity. As you can imagine, like it becomes almost like your whole environment becomes your palette, and you can make painting around this. We had also other projects like this elephant is also interesting. It's almost like an air tag, but it literally tells you in which shelf that you forgot your USB stick. MR food information is also interesting, that if you have an allergy, it actually on a supermarket, it shows you which food that you need to avoid. The safer is actually, since it's like a safety, I think that's maybe amazing opportunity against disasters or earthquake. It looks at your room and your house and then understands what are the parts of the house that you need to avoid while on an earthquake, and what are the parts that you need to hide, and it understands according to the mesh of the house. Plus, it also asks to ChatGPT to understand which parts are safer. and all of these projects are now applying for funds and then becoming commercialized as well. Yeah, there are a few more projects, but the education part, maybe I can quickly share that. The education part, because we are talking about inclusive education here. The first project is actually, I'm sure every kid wants to learn robots, especially nowadays, but they may not have access to robots parts. So this is actually an amazing opportunity that you can literally have the virtual robot parts and then bring them together almost like a Lego pieces and make the robots compete together between each other. And we have also a lot of, with the help of Logitech Pen, lots of calligraphy and language learning projects that we work with Pearson, one of the biggest education companies, to make sure that these use cases can be used. And most of these projects also not only use XR, but also AI recognition tools with the help of camera. So we just started this hackathon initiative this year. If you are one of the maybe organization or communities or governmental agencies that you would like us to join forces with your region, feel free to reach us. Mine is farhan@xrbootcamp.com. Rahaz is rahel@xrbootcamp.com. We are looking for now different regions around the world to partner with to create other hackathons like this one for the next year. Thank you for listening to us.
Yeah, thank you very much. And for us, all of these initiatives are basically to make the industry more diverse, and especially the hackathons are a great opportunity for especially students to get some more professional experience, and again, building up their prototypes to build portfolios to get the jobs that they want and dream of.
Thank you very much,
thank you
guys.
very much for inviting us here.
If you wouldn't mind adding your emails and the site onto the chat so everybody can grab them there, that would be great. I'm now going to hand it over to David, who's going to introduce the first few speakers for our 5-minute chats.
Thank you. And yes, everybody, you're encouraged to reach out to Farhan and Rahel to take part in that. It looks really inspiring, and there's nothing better than getting actively engaged and involved with these things. So great work, guys. Keep it up. Okay, so our next few presentations, we've got 6. They're going to be short, 5-minute, highly impactful presentations. And we're going to have Ori Braffman, Eric Hawkinson, and Larry Cameron coming up next. So starting off with Ori Braffman. Ori's the CEO of Insight Reality, a distinguished teaching fellow at UC Berkeley, Haas School of Business, and an internationally renowned New York Times best-selling author and expert on decentralized leadership and empowering human networks. Ori specializes in organizational culture, leadership, and change management, having run leadership programs for some of the highest levels of the US military, Fortune 500 companies, and numerous industry organizations. So, Ori, please tell us what you have.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting. As background, I've been an author for 20 years. My first book was called The Starfish and the Spider. The metaphor of that book is that if you cut the head off of a spider, it dies. But if you cut the arm off of a starfish, it grows one back. That's because unlike the spider, the starfish doesn't have a central brain. And you think about that as a metaphor for business and society, from very centralized spider-like organizations to very decentralized starfish organizations. Everything from Alcoholics Anonymous to Wikipedia to, unfortunately, terror networks take on a much more decentralized approach. What's interesting about these organizations is that the harder that you fight a starfish, the stronger it becomes. When you cut off the head, the network becomes more and more decentralized and thus more and more flexible and adaptive. Over the last 15 years or so, I've been working with the US military on a very core question, which is how do you take on a decentralized opponent? And you think about both terror networks, disinformation networks, how do you actually effectively oppose them? And it's an easy approach to say, well, we don't know what the future is changing, so what we need to do is we need to create adaptive leaders. But think for a second about anybody that you've ever met who was very rigid, and you send them to, I don't know, a 2-day course, and all of a sudden they become adaptive, or a 1-week course, or even a month-long course. And I think that we are asking the wrong question. Rather than asking the question about how do you create an adaptive leader, we need to think about the leader within the construct of a network. And how do you create adaptive networks? And that depending on the context of the situation, different parts of the network through inclusion are able to rise to the occasion, if you will, and be able to help solve a problem. So I've been doing leadership training for about 20 years. And I would say that the military has taught me a lot in terms of different approaches to leadership training. And specifically, I went to one of the training bases in Louisiana. There's thousands of acres of mountainous terrain where, when I was there, the 82nd Airborne was actually flying in for a training mission. And in that training mission, about 5,000 people jumped. Of those, they were expecting a couple of people to either get seriously hurt or even die. Because that's what just happens when you have 5,000 people jump from plane. When you think about industries where lives are at stake, aviation, medicine, defense, the trainings are incredibly lifelike. Imagine getting on a plane tomorrow, and it's a 737. The pilot or the captain comes on board and says, "Hey, ladies and gentlemen, good news. I've never been inside the cockpit of a plane, but I've read every book there is to read about aviation." I don't know how many of us would stay on that plane. And yet that is how we're doing leadership training in corporate America. And I think that VR is going to fundamentally change that for a couple of reasons. One is the ability to interact as a team and as a network. 2 is to learn from each other. And 3 is to actually be able to create an environment that is inclusive, that we can hear all of the voices. So my company is called Insight Reality. We're developing our first product with our launch in summer of 2025, and we'll tell you more about that as we're working, but we're looking forward to the rest of this conversation and to specifically thinking about how do you empower the individual as you bring them into the XR environment.
Thank you, Ori. That was great. And if you could share the details for Insight Reality in the comments, then anybody who wishes to reach out should be encouraged to do so. Thank you very much. So for our next 5-minute speaker is Eric Hawkinson. Eric is a learning futurist at Together Learning, where he tinkers with and designs technologies that may better inform the future of teacher and learning. Eric's projects have included augmented tourism rallies, AR community art exhibitions, mixed reality escape rooms, and other experiments in immersive technology. Eric's a professor at Kyoto University of Foreign Studies and a research coordinator at the MAVR Research Group. The founder of Together Learning, a developer at Reality Lab, a community teacher for team teachers, chair of World Learning Labs, and a humble supporter of TEDx Kyoto. He created the interactive media Forever Kyoto and is the author of The Augmented Learner. So, Eric, take it away.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm very much appreciating all of the talks so far, especially the last one. Ori, thank you very much. Together Learning, what we're going to talk about today in this short presentation, is kind of related to that. Together Learning is all about less a stage on the stage and how these technologies are pushing educators in a direction of collaborative learning and learning from each other, especially now that we have AI in the mix. I got a lot of roles. Some of those were just talked about. It's a short amount of time, but mostly I want to kind of talk about the four areas that we've been kind of mixing together in this ring: augmented reality, virtual reality, digital twins, and artificial intelligence, and the inclusiveness that is the kind of the topic of today is a blending of all these things that I've found through practicing, and these are some courses that we've been implementing some form of XR for at least 5 years at our university, mostly led in our lab here that I'll introduce a little bit. First, augmented reality, digital prototyping, getting students to understand what it means to connect digital things with real things, and rapid prototyping and product like what the XR Bootcamp might be doing as well. This is something from 2012 where we have kind of the persistent kind of collaborative art space where students are putting videos onto a wall with a platform. Then we have a persistent space in one of our labs that has the same thing. More on that in a little bit. I'm going to go really quick, but I do have all this stuff online. I'm going to quick put that in the chat as well. You'll find that later if I go a little bit too quick. Moving to virtual reality, right? So thinking about inclusivity and trying to design for it, the kind of what we went through during the pandemic is very telling for us as far as the scalability, the usability, the digital divides sort of aspects around it. And in 2018, we had some students in the classroom, and they were doing a lot of stuff to prepare for a career in tourism using virtual reality. We kind of made a persistent kind of virtual space during the pandemic for that, and they were starting to create virtual tours at a distance, more asynchronously. And then later on, after they started designing their own virtual tours, we got them back into the classroom in our new laboratory, which I'll show you in just a second. So in 2017, these tourism students mostly were in the classroom looking kind of like this, kind of a Google Glass thing. And during the pandemic, it was mostly in a persistent virtual space where they were online in virtual worlds. And now we're bringing that all back together in kind of a mixed reality space with the reality I just showed you earlier, and an immersive screen space, kind of a shared immersive technology where we can take virtual trips together and view virtual reality together. And all of this stuff is blending in a way that I think is bringing more inclusivity to more students, because some students are more good with the tech. More students have more variety of needing a partner or a presenter or somebody near them, or especially with these students here in Kyoto, they're not native English speakers, and most of my classwork is mostly in English by design, mostly sometimes in Japanese. But the mixture of all these things is allowing for students to approach the technology or implement the technology in a way that suits them, rather than having the student have to come to the technology. So the mixture of all these things as we move forward, and especially now with artificial intelligence in the mix, is really helping this move forward. For example, on digital twins, we have a diplomacy course here at the university, and we made a digital twin of the Security Council chamber, and we're bringing in students at a distance that are in this space and in virtual reality and on cell phones. And so what we're trying to do is play with this inclusivity as far as access to technology. So we have some students here that are not using a device, they're just sitting with other people face to face. And we have some students that are in virtual headsets that are we're trying to figure out the modes of communication in between different types of modes inside of these. So they're represented as avatars on a large screen. And then there are some students perhaps at a distance in a headset and or on PCs or tablets, what have you. So all of that stuff leads to some of the questions that were earlier in this during the kind of the swarm activity that we had, right? One of the things that I kind of think about when I think about inclusivity is the open access to it. When I try to choose platforms, I'm looking for things that are open source, that are multiple device, that are able to be accessed on the open web, that are usually subscription free, so something that we can put on our own web servers. All that stuff leads to more inclusivity and is more available to more students. If you're interested, I'm going to put a couple of links down into the chat to follow up on this and our community that are working together to now bridge this lab with other labs in other places all around the world. So I invite you to kind of join in on some of the stuff that we're doing. And again, I would very much like to send my gratitude to the organizers and supporters for this worthwhile endeavor in metaverse safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. And again, I encourage you all to follow the links to Eric's work and follow up with him afterwards. It's fantastic. So our next guest up is Larry Cameron. Larry is the founder and president of Paradigm Intelligence Limited and has over 25 years experience in the technology and cybersecurity industries. As president of Paradigm Intelligence, he's worked with several NGOs, including ATII, Sentinel Foundation, NCPTF, the Traverse Project, PICDO or PICTO, and many others. He's also a trainer for Interpol, Special Operations at Fort Bragg, a trainer for all 5,400 agencies, making up the 61 internet crimes against child exploitation, amongst others. So, Larry, take it away.
Hey, Ron, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So designing inclusive immersive learning experiences in the metaverse, a lot of things you want to consider. You know, as you mentioned, trainer for Interpol, and I've worked with the United Nations, and both of those have about 196 countries. What I see as inclusive is nobody being left out. You should be able to connect anywhere in the world and learn something. You should be able to do it in any language. We now have auto translation features. But there's a lot of stuff regarding privacy and security and safety of children. So I work with a lot of internet crimes against children, task forces, and child protection NGOs. So safety is probably one of the first thing, but safety is different for everyone. There may be people that are more vulnerable. Children are more vulnerable, but what about someone with autism? Or, it's a different than learning disability like dyslexia. You don't want to leave any of those people out as well. So if there's the globe at your fingertips, have mentorship programs and age groups. You can even do sign language in these, have automatic sign language. And all this AI in the metaverse, it's either text or it's either voice. I mean,
Hey, Larry, we can hear you, but we can't see you. There's a black screen. There we go.
Sorry, security for my laptop.
Good, yeah.
But that's another one of the things. You got to be careful. You might want an avatar. Avatars are a good way to disguise the face and also not know the location. And it looks like I forgot my background too as well. Sorry, people. You want to do a lot of best practices and case studies for this. I mean, we've done different proof of concept in different countries surrounding the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. You can do things very simply and have the most impact. You would want to, for instance, there was one actual community, they were selling a lot of their children. A lot of their children were going missing. So what do you do there? You implement a universal benefit to prevent them from selling their children. Then you train the teachers advanced concepts like AI, machine learning, robotics. I think it only took 3 years when, you notice crime rates dropped 90%. There was no kids being sold. And after 3 years, the parents were denying the universal benefit only because their kids got scholarships and were now supporting the parents. So having communities engage with each other, I think, is probably one of the best ways in order to make the most impact. Not limiting these people, because when you learn advanced concepts, you get good paying jobs, right? And a community that's used to selling their kids, there's a big difference there. I didn't have time for slides, but I'll put some links in the chat. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Larry. Our next speaker is Dr. Sana Farid. She is the program director in extended reality at Prince Sultan University. Dr. Farid is a surgeon, an entrepreneur, and futurist dedicated to using emerging technologies for global betterment. She pioneers innovation with her extensive research and impactful programs in XR. As a leading figure in XR education, healthcare, and corporate training, she is among the top 100 XR influencers worldwide. Serving as president of the VR/AR Association, MENA, Dr. Sana shapes industry standards and safety guidelines. The Children Task Force, ICAC, she is a adjunct professor for computer forensics and cloud security there, and she's head of cybersecurity for the Cyber Rights Organization out of The Hague, the Canadian Center for Open Source Intelligence, and the Baracus Group as well. Her works with local, state, federal, and international law enforcement, along with military organizations on human rights violations, national security, counter-human trafficking, and child exploitation, and missing child investigations, are manifold. We welcome her very much to the stage.
Thank you very much, Jamie, and I'm so glad to be here. All of the days of the conference were very, very insightful. Just for the sake of clarification, I think in the last part there was some changes in my introduction that you have shared. Anyway, so I'll just start by sharing my slides. For some reason, 1 second. Okay. Okay. So my talk is about the inclusive immersive technology in educational institutes. So by background, I'm not an educationalist. I work closely with various institutes at various levels, helping them to implement a virtual reality or an augmented reality setup. It is very, very various. It is different from one school to another, from one university to another, depending on the grade of the students, depending on the type of the students, the language. So it's very, very, very varied. And the type of work I do with every project is different. However, in this talk, I'm going to describe some of the strategies and patterns I follow that help me implement our programs. So first of all, keeping in mind accessibility. To me, accessibility means the ease and usability of the content. So straightforward, or even my presentation can be taken as a checklist that I would take during my first or second presentation with the organization that I'm dealing with. So first of all, we just discuss and we brainstorm what is happening, what they're teaching, and what are the areas that they think can be improved with virtual or augmented reality. Learning that helps us to understand which technology will be best. Whether it's going to be virtual reality, whether it's going to be mixed reality, whether it's going to be artificial intelligence, and so on. After that, depending on the type of or the grade of the students, their capabilities, we would understand the hardware. In a lot of the projects, we try to make the content very, very hardware agnostic, which means not only it is available on a virtual reality, let's say PCVR or a standalone, but at many times it would also be available in a 2D format, either on a tablet or on a browser, to be accessible to all the students. Also, we would have a very large focus on the software in terms of there are different access points. So the administrator would have their own access. The instructor would have their own level of access, which is showing them different features. And then lastly, the students or the learners will be having their type of access. A color theme is very, very important when designing the content. And that's why we do take serious consideration into the color blindness friendly palettes and understanding the high contrast. The color theme will also play a role in shifting from one frame to another. So these topics are not in the minds of our prospective clients when we're meeting them. However, if they're not kept in mind, they may lead to serious challenges when the XR program is being implemented. The field of vision and a degree of flexibility or motion inside the virtual reality setup is actually depending again on understanding the environment. I'm going to take a very simple environment of a typical school. So in that, we first understand where are we going to use the XR content? Are they building a dedicated lab, or are they moving the devices into individual classrooms? The difference is simply we would need to understand how much area each student will be having when they are using the XR tools. Furthermore, what is the content that they're using inside? For example, content like field trips inside virtual reality may or may not require more motion, or you can probably guide the students on teleportation feature inside the virtual reality, which many apps already involve. If a certain experience is limiting you to a certain area, for example, chemistry related experiments that can be done in a limited field, then a compatible setup would be recommended for them. The setup is also depending on the amount of devices, the number of devices, and what type are they. Are they very high-end? Are they very basic devices? And so on. One of the most important things that we have learned in the past few years of us working in the education system is the quality of the visual is probably the greatest contributors to issues like nausea and lightheadedness while using virtual reality, especially. So that's why we take that especially into consideration when we're developing content. And then we talk about the UX and UI. So when we're talking about the text, where the text is going to appear, the height of the text when you're wearing the virtual reality or mixed reality glasses, how accessible that is, the distance from the vision to the text, and how are you interacting with it? Are you simply just following it, or is it there to read only? Is it there to click or to, follow your eye, distance and things like that? So we do keep all of that into consideration. In most of the content that we create, we try to make the text as well as the audio minimalist to make it more and more immersive. To the extent that we really don't use a lot of text, not even a full sentence. Mainly the text would be there for guidance. Also, the audio is very important. When we are designing, we are coming up with various strategies. I think I forgot to mention, but I work mainly in the GCC, which is primarily in the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. And we do have multiple languages implemented in various schools here, primarily being Arabic and English as well. So the voice UI is very, very important. We also have, in the past few years, we understood that we started using a gender neutral voice to be accessible to all of the groups that we are working with. Not that it had any challenges or issues, but to avoid any challenges that may happen in the future, and so on. We have limited the use of music, but increased the use of voice or audio that is coming from using equipment. For example, if you're walking in a field, if there are animals around you, or if there are streets and cars and so on. The duration on which, this is probably one of, again, very, very important point when we are discussing the development of any content, is for how much duration will the virtual reality scene or the training program will be used. And it really depends on how well you design it. The objective is not to make it very lengthy or very short. I think the objective is in how much amount of time we're able to deliver the learning objective to the student. To be very honest, I am not the expert who's designing this. I'm doing all of my design work with close collaboration with educators. My part only comes when about the XR on helping them understand what can be done and what is the best way to do it and how to minimize challenges in doing that. Lastly, the key takeaway point is that the major focus of our work is actually on the designing process, not on the development process. We spend significant time designing content, writing it multiple times, of course, with a multidisciplinary team involving technical side as well as the pedagogy side, and we involve multiple people in the process of designing the game document. After that, we have very much focus on the UX and UI in terms of color, text, field of vision, degree of freedom, and basically everything that we have discussed about to make the experience inside the XR very, very smooth. We do rigorous testing with multiple user types. Oftentimes, the schools or the institutes, they designate different types of users for testing purposes. The testers involve educators as well as students from different grades and different backgrounds to help us with the testing phase. The most important factor that has been proven essential for our practice is, from the beginning, involve all of the stakeholders in the process. Stakeholders include the school owners, educators, investors even. Most importantly, the parents of the students, especially because these are the people who are still, at least this, I see this in my daily practice, many of them, not all of them, but many of them would be skeptical about technologies, especially a wearable one, especially one that is involving the internet if the platform is online. Involving them from the very early stage is very essential to build awareness, first of all, and keep them involved in the ecosystem and in the entire process, gain their trust. In many of our programs, we even have parents as testers for the application before having it in the mainstream. Lastly, I would just like to mention a very important fact is that classrooms almost, or all of the schools by the Ministry of Education, we do have strict protocols to have inclusive classroom, which means special education needs do follow the mainstream education, which again raises a very particular point to follow certain standards to keeping the designs inclusive, the whole experience and so on. Thank you everyone for listening, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or over the chat.
Thank you so much, Dr. Farid. That was a very interesting talk. Our next presenter is Chris Huer. He is a pioneering digital transformation and innovation expert with more than 30 years of experience spanning entrepreneurship, consulting, and thought leadership. He's a globally renowned voice in the future of work, having led social business at Deloitte and serving on the team to launch Deloitte Digital globally. As an IBM futurist, he worked with AI and blockchain for creating business value from 2012 to 2015. And more recently, he has focused on optimizing team collaboration and organizational effectiveness through founding the TeamFlow Institute, where he is the managing director. His expertise lies at the intersection of human-centered organizational design, digital transformation, and the future of work. Chris, excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be among such an esteemed group so far and to learn so much about this very important topic. I'm going to look a little more broadly than at the specifics of implementation and design principles, although those are very important, and I agree with them wholeheartedly, having worked at the Bobby standards back in the late 90s when I was the head of e-business for the United States Mint, launching the first ever opt-in email marketing campaign for the federal government and a whole bunch of other stuff that doesn't matter today. But that accessibility thing, I just really wanted to emphasize again. But as we start looking at the future and what we need to do, obviously every individual needs to be able to contribute, and there's more to it. But the importance of working in teams has never been greater, and I've heard that throughout. And of course, there's been a couple of chats, messages about this too far. But if we aren't doing training in an environment where there is mutual respect for all the other teammates, for each other, where we can value the unique human contributions of each individual and their diverse thinking and their cultures, we won't ever succeed in our broader objectives. One of the biggest challenges in organizations today is that we live in a world of increasing complexity, and we can no longer afford to look at anything, even learning and training, in isolation. We really need to take a more holistic view. So we've looked at this issue from a various set of lenses, but more recently, we've been looking at it with regards to bringing AI into the organization. So that will be my context today. Our research shows that the majority of employees are fearful of AI, whether because it will take their jobs or just because they don't understand it. The fear is real, and most organizations are not doing enough to assuage these fears. This fear can amplify in immersive environments if not addressed. The most important aspect of this is adopting a position of augmenting rather than replacing people with AI. This is where I get excited about Team Flow and how we connect the two of those. Team Flow outlines a path to better performance overall and well-being for the individual participants. And in particular, as we look at the implementation of AI technologies, the core principles of Team Flow couldn't be more important to this next massive transformation of society and organizations. When I left Deloitte, I had found that the biggest problem in all organizations, large and small, and I was working in almost every sector, oddly enough, as an interdisciplinarian, but I saw that the need and the focus should be on alignment, which turns out to be more of a mental construct. About 2 years ago, I discovered this idea of Team Flow, the work of Dr. Jeff Vandenhout out of Eindhoven in Amsterdam, and realized a really great epiphany, that it wasn't that mental alignment, but it was more the intrinsic motivational force of a collective ambition that serves as the heart of the model that he's developed and that I've shared a link to here on LinkedIn, where I just shared the image rather than trying to run slides here with you today. It really comes down to, at the end of the day, though, a matter of trust. And this model shows how we can get there, how we can create trust by starting with open communications policies where people are free to speak and not fearful, but they're free to speak respectfully, where we not only expect, but build patterns of mutual trust, where we do what we say we will do, and we communicate about things early when we can. To learn and grow, we must feel safe and valued. This, of course, will also solve for one of the most fundamental challenges that organizations face today, to increase engagement, to have employees who care about the work we're doing. Why and how? Because when your personal goals are aligned with the team goals, with the organizational goals, and your collective ambition, when you're clear about what you are good at and what you're not good at, and you have the same understanding with your teammates, we can better integrate our skills, and we can avoid conversations of blame to focus on conversations of solutions that produce better results. Establishing a thing grounded in the collective ambition with clarity of purpose and intended outcomes will create a more engaged cohort of learners who feel safe to learn, are more open to it, and will build a better sense of teamness together. And again, as I really think is so important, we have to balance our own well-being with the objectives and outcomes of the organizations, of the team, and of the specific training and learning that we have in mind. So let's design this immersive learning environments with shared purpose and clear outcomes to create a safer and more inclusive metaverse where everyone feels empowered to learn and contribute. Together, we can not only humanize AI and unlock the true potential of the metaverse for all, but we can advance society to our greatest heights and achieve our greatest potential. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. Our next speaker is Alicia Hayes. I just want to make sure Alicia is here with us. Yes.
I am here.
Oh, wonderful. Hi, Alicia. Let me introduce you. I'm so glad you made it. Dr. Alicia Hayes, founder and director of Surge XR Lab and assistant professor in the Department of Learning Technologies at the University of North Texas. And she holds a PhD in modeling and simulation from the University of Central Florida, along with degrees and certifications in communication, modeling and simulation, psychology, and computer science. During her time at the University of North Texas, Dr. Hayes has developed microlearning content for NATO, the Demystifying AI micro-credential for UNT, and build classes using open education resources. Her research focuses on immersive technologies like VR, AR, and XR, as well as AI, simulation, games, and human-computer interaction. I had to get that all out before you started, my goodness. Welcome.
Thanks. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation, and also I appreciate not having to say all of that. So thanks so much. Yes, my name is Alicia Hayes, and I am the director of the Surge Lab. It's probably my proudest part of my career, even though I really am so blessed in the career I've had so far. Surge stands for Simulation, Research, Game Experience, and basically those are all the things I love to research, so I just blended them together. And then XR, of course, is, for those of you, I feel like everyone here would know, but virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality. And of course, we're always talking about AI, and I have to just drop my little soapbox moment of saying, even though AI has become so prominent in the last couple of years, it's not exactly new technology. We've been using it when we've been building simulations and VR for years. But today I want to talk just a little bit, and I have 5 minutes, so that's why you see the little Mario with the fire hydrant. So this is going to be like a sip, taking a sip from a fire hydrant, because I just want to tell you some of the designing tools and guiding principles that we should all be thinking about when we're designing immersive tools for learning. So of course, we should be learning objectives driven. I know this should be obvious, but if you really look at a lot of the tools out there, you can see that these guiding principles are not often all held to. Learner-centered, of course, subject matter expert informed. SME stands for subject matter expert. So I love the Dr. Farid's contributions as a surgeon to these tools that are being developed. And you can see the inverse of that in so many tools that people kind of willy-nilly pull together what they imagine to be learning objectives without actually contacting subject matter experts, which is so important when we're talking about things that are career-driven. And then, of course, access and accessibility. I put them together, even though they're very different. But accessibility, of course, is making things accessible for people of all neurodiverse and physical needs, but also access. We often ignore the concept of access. Do people have, for instance, access to Wi-Fi? I've seen so many instances in my career where people create a tool and then deliver it to a school and find out that the school has a firewall and they can't actually access the tool that they've developed, things like that. So we have to keep that access and accessibility in mind. And then ludology, this is how they write about it, the academic term, but really, what is fun? How do we figure out what is fun? And that goes back to understanding who the students are. So being learner-centered. You know, what's fun for a 3-year-old is not the same as what's fun for an 8-year-old, and definitely not the same as what is fun for me sometimes. And of course, iterative. And iterative also addressing the fact that we are iterating, meaning we're going back to the drawing board regularly. But also, as we're iterating, we should be testing with users, and also, like Dr. Farid said, talking to parents, that kind of thing. My slides just went away. They're back. Can you still see my slides now? Awesome. So I wanted to share just a little bit of my approach to how I can create content and be aware of the context. And I feel like maybe in this kind of current era, I have to do a little shout out to the concepts of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, because as a designer and developer, understanding diverse users is so important. And I had to give just a little touch on the fact that we've been running these summer camps in Texas for a while. They are on pause due to Senate Bill 17. I'm going to redesign them to be more inclusive so that we're not thwarted. But generally, this concept of having these summer camps, I have a summer camp where students test different immersive learning tools, and then they can help us write papers about them, and they get experience with user experience testing, which is a whole career that they can pursue. And they also get opportunities to try lots of different tools that they can take back to their schools. And we also give them access to the technology to borrow and take to their schools. And some of the students, we also give them kind of low level, like Google Cardboard things that they could definitely take with them to their schools. So finally, I wanted to conclude with just a few of the projects that I've worked on and a slight overview of how these principles apply. First experience that I have is Stemming from Disaster is a project we're iterating on right now. And if you want to watch a video on it, if you Google UNT's The Lab, you can watch this video that's here. But basically the concept is, if we could create empathy with a mixed reality environment. And I keep saying mixed reality because if we're talking about accessibility, you can't create a tool for students in a school and have it only be in VR, because there are many reasons why students can't access VR. So for me, everything we build in the lab goes across multiple modalities. This tool, though, immerses students in a natural disaster and takes them through the things that need to happen to restore a community after a natural disaster, introducing them to multiple STEM career fields. So it's a game and a simulation, but also a learning experience. And ideally, when we're done, it will also be an assessment tool. So that's one example, and feel free to look that up. I can try to put that in the chat after I'm done. The next funded project that we have is the Readerverse, where we're trying to engage third graders, because that's where we lose so many students, with immersive tools for learning. So this doesn't look as interesting as it really is, because what we did is create an environment with the Unreal Engine where students can run around a virtual library that we've created, and they can pick up a book, and then the book starts reading to them with their pedagogical agent there that can read to them. And then we have educational kind of immersive games. For instance, when we get to the part where Alice goes down the well, they actually kind of go through this kind of hurricane situation. These are all, of course, right now in progress. We don't have any fully working tools, but we have been, like I said, we're very much in my lab about iteration. So we've been iterating and taking these tools out to students. We have a good relationship with the Fort Worth Museum of Science and History, and we've had about 40 students and parents and librarians look at this, and we've gotten a lot of really great feedback. And I absolutely recommend that you get your product in front of people as soon as possible. And finally, the last project that I'm going to mention, because I have 5 minutes and I really hope I haven't gone over, is we have an NSF-funded tool that we've been working on with Cornell University's Andrew Stevenson-Wan. And what we're looking at is how to give teachers real-time feedback in a dashboard. Right now, this is a virtual product. So it's for practicing your teaching in a virtual space. Ideally, my goal is for us to move this into a mixed reality space where someone can have a heads-up display. And what you see are dashboards over the students' heads, giving teachers real-time feedback on, like, which students have you distributed your gaze to? We look at other things like proximity. So are you approaching students? Because teachers use nonverbal communication regularly, and they don't really have any feedback on how effectively they're using it. So the idea of this project is really, it's actually called a tool to reflect bias to teachers, because maybe a teacher might not realize if their behavior is demonstrating bias. So we have this tool where in practice they can get that feedback. And long term, like I said, our projects are very iterative. Long term, I'd love for us to be able to do this with a mixed reality heads-up display where teachers could actually get real-time feedback. And we've also been looking at other modalities like bug and ear technology, haptic feedback, things like that. But those are just some of the examples I wanted to provide of what I consider. I teach some instructional design classes as part of my career, and those are the principles I'm like, these are the ones you must know. There's lots of little guiding tools, but if you start at this place where you're looking at You're looking at the learning objectives. You're being learner-centered. You're making sure you're informed by the SMEs. You're making sure things are accessible and accessible. And then you're also, yes, please try to make it fun. That would be great. Then I think you're going to do well, even if you don't remember the other principles that we teach. Thank you so much. And I would love for any of you, all of you, to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am currently considering new opportunities, so I might not be at the email address that you have for me, but I am always at this LinkedIn profile.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hayes. And last, but certainly not least, we have Caitlin E. Krause, who is the founder, author, and educator from MindWise. It's a globally recognized experienced designer, author, and keynote speaker. Caitlin Krause founded the consultancy MindWise and teaches about well-being and technology at Stanford University. She's authored 6 books, including Designing Wonder, Mindful by Design, and most recently, Digital Well-being. Helping leaders and teams navigate complexity and change, she has advised organizations including LinkedIn, Google, TED, and the US State Department. Caitlin creates human-centered experiences mediated by technology, using creativity, meditation, meditation, and emotional intelligence for full life thriving. Thank you so much for being here, Caitlin.
Oh, thank you for the honor of being here. And I feel like it's perfectly timed. I want to see just, do I have maybe, is it 3 minutes or do I have 4? I'll fit your timing. Okay. I know we need stretch breaks. So the human body definitely needs breaks. That's essentially what I do. I start with our physical presence and then develop and design the layer stack intentionally about how we layer and augment with digital. And it's a pleasure to be here. When Dr. Hayes was mentioning giving real-time feedback, I just wanted to share, I started out as a high school teacher full-time. And one of the first observations was saying to me, do you know that you're actually preferencing toward the windows? And I realized, wow, I think my human body likes natural light. And I was teaching toward the windows more than I was teaching toward the rest of the classroom. So imagine if I had had that tool, it would have been even better at the time. And I think we contain multitudes. A lot of us, I think, come in here as very curious, lifelong learners. Yeah, myself included. And we're always looking to integrate in meaningful ways without losing that human in the loop. So it's really wonderful that XRSI has this initiative happening where different people can come, share around the campfire. These talks are brief and yet intentional. And that's how I would want to close before the break, just talking about the human intention meeting our attentional practices right now. And maybe the next phase is moving beyond fear. Yes, we need these initiatives together that are aspirational and incorporate wonder and awe. So a lot of my research has been about how do we move into states of creativity, states of imagination? How do we inspire learners of all ages to move into those states where we can be critical and not cynical of worlds around us? And thank you, as we were sharing in the introduction, this book just came out, Digital Well-being, and its subtitle is Empowering Connection with Wonder and Imagination in the Age of AI. And I teach at Stanford also the course Digital Wellbeing, subtitle Healthy Relationships with Technology. So I just wanted to invite everybody listening to think about the human-human relationship mediated by tech, and also how we form better relationships internally, because it can be how we perceive our devices and how we actually have an emotional attachment to the lifestyles that we've chosen. How many of us are still coming out of pandemic, still with that feeling inside of us of, oh, this is what it's like to be human in this age. So in closing, I thought I would just kind of move us into talking about what I've experienced that I use for education. It happens to be in the book, and I'm happy to share it with people. It's on pages 57 and 58. Talking about the imagination index. So this is 11 keys of how to design using wonder as a priority. I use it in my own learning design for classes at Stanford and for working with people of all ages. And I just wanted to reflect with us to see how this lands for you. The imaginative leader, learner, and designer sees beyond a separate self to a collective we, incorporating the integrity of identities, recognizing that we can contain multitudes. And then we can use XR environments to inhabit different personas, to really understand each other, to build empathy. The second quality understands and embraces the fun factor. Fun and play motivates everything. So I'm a big proponent of what Seymour Papert called the 4 Ps. How can we introduce more projects, passion, peers, and play? We can't take out the fun factor. Builds designs that are beyond simulations. So this is a chance for education to have something that's not just a learning and task practice that replicates physical reality, but there's something more at stake and a whole world of imagination that can lead us there. Fourth, prioritizes wonder and awe and creative reflection and reverie. And I'm reading these out. I know it sounds very, very like a stack, but it's introducing that the topics of wonder and imagination don't have to be just abstract rainbows and butterflies. I wanted to give real tools and real frameworks so that people can see that in this age of AI, what makes us come alive is that feeling of wonder. And neuroscience shows that it fires equal to anger on the opposite end of the continuum. So celebrating that wonder and awe, another factor of imagination is to celebrate non-attachment to typical constraints of time, of space, of identity. I know I'm the closing talk, so I feel, I understand the constraint of time, but how many of us have been in XR worlds and kind of lost ourselves? So you can lose yourself to find yourself. And sometimes that liminal state creates a deeper plasticity in the brain where you can really shift some awareness, deepen understandings. It has huge potential. Co-create psychologically safe environments. How many of us have read Amy Edmondson's research? It's really important for psychologically safe teaching, learning spaces. We can take risks safely, fail often, iterate upward. Next factor, give agency to self and others, paying attention to, is it my story or am I serving somebody else as well? Is it co-creative? Recognize humanity in self, in others, in all. To recognize different states of flow. So later we can deep dive into Csikszentmihalyi and qualities of flow and attention. Second to last quality of imagination in design is to allow participants to exit mindfully, because experiences in XR start before we apply any hardware, and they should have this exit strategy that introduces reflection and application. And it's appropriate that I'm speaking last before a stretch break. Non-addictive algorithms, this is important to that design spiral. And the very last one is to create social connection opportunities, because we have mirror neurons. So when we're in mindful neural networking that's fueled by human synchrony, we can be more intentional about positively impacting belonging and combating loneliness, which has become an epidemic. So I wanted to close, with the spirit of the gravity of why we're doing this work, and also the levity of how we can introduce more color, more fun, more playfulness and wonder in worlds that need it. And XR is the ideal medium, which is why I'm somebody that loves to design and play in the space. So thank you for inviting me to share. And thanks to everybody here in community, because you really are gathering really wonderful voices who work in the industry to elevate it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being a great voice to end this section with. We're going to take another.
What if you could use a simulation game?
Oh, what's that? Go ahead, Alicia.
Oh no, that wasn't. I'm so sorry. I thought I was muted. I was trying to put that video in the chat.
Encourage conversation. We are about to take a 10-minute break. Instead, what I'll encourage is Alicia and Caitlin to have a little conversation here while we're on the break. And anybody who wants to join in, please do feel free. We'll be back in 10 minutes to go into Objective 3. We're now entering the third and final section of the 5th Annual Metaverse Safety Weeks edition of Education Day. And in this community lab, we meet myself and David. As your moderators, will be focused on a opening talk by Reed Blackman, followed by Thinkscape, which is developed by our sponsor, Unanimous AI. So let me now review the focus of this thematic discussion. Together, we're going to generate innovative strategies for implementing and scaling immersive learning systems across academic and corporate sectors. We're going to address challenges and opportunities in creating a global, collaborative knowledge creation ecosystem enabled by immersive technologies. In this session, participants will engage in the Thinkscape exercise, a real-time conversation platform designed to optimize group insights and amplify collective intelligence. This interactive approach will address challenges and opportunities in creating a global, collaborative knowledge creation ecosystem enabled by immersive technologies. The goal is to develop actionable plans for the future of immersive education that can be applied across various learning contexts. And with that, I get to now read a very impressive bio of Reed Blackman. Reed Blackman, PhD, is the founder and CEO of Virtue, an AI ethical risk consultancy. He's also the author of Ethical Machines by HBR Press and host of a podcast by the same name. In his role as CEO, he leads the company's efforts in designing responsible AI programs and training for the likes of Amazon, Etsy, Kraft Heinz, Merck, US Bank, Nationwide, and more. He has advised the Canadian government on their federal AI regulations. He was a founding member of EY's External AI Advisory Board and was an external senior advisor to the Deloitte AI Institute.
That's too much already. Who cares?
I'm going to keep going, man, because it's always impressive.
Who cares?
All right. So let's just say that you were on a bunch of TV channels. You've written some stuff. You've been in HBR and New York Times. And as before you were at Virtue, you were a professor of philosophy, which is why I know you, at UNC Chapel Hill and at Colgate University, which is my alma mater. And of course, since today is Friday the 13th, once again, host prerogative, every Friday the 13th is Colgate Day. So I get to yell Colgate, go Gate before I say you can learn more about Reed Blackman at reedblackman.com. Reed, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks so much for that nice introduction. I mean, maturely cut off at the right time. I feel like so listen. Okay, so usually I would sort of do my normal. Hey, here are the ethical risks of AI and things to watch out for. But this is on education in particular. As Jamie mentioned, I was a professor of philosophy for a while. I was a professor for 10 years. So even though, I've spent the past 6.5 or so years advising corporations and government on how not to ethically screw things up with AI. The vast majority of my career has been as an academic. From 18 to 39 years old, it was straight, undergrad, grad school professor. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and I'll also try to stir the pot a little bit. That's what philosophers do. It's what I like to do anyway. So it all fits. So I'll share my screen. I have a very extremely simple presentation. I'll just go through some points. And the part of the point here is I tried to put things rather boldly so that people will push back. So I hope people do push back and say, no, Reed, you're wrong. You're exaggerating the things, or you missed something. I'd love to hear that. That'd be great. I think that sort of helps with everyone. I'm happy to be sort of an example of how not to think about things. Okay, let me pull this up. Hold on one sec. Where is this thing? Here we go. All right, good. How are we doing? Everyone see that? I can just figure out how to. Good. Is that full screen now?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So some potentially controversial thoughts on learning in the metaverse. I know that I have something like 10 minutes, so I will try to keep this brief. I just have a couple points to make. And part of the thoughts come from thinking about the way that this event was framed. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with it, but I have some questions. So here's two sort of quotes that I pulled out. One quote is, what is a high quality educational experience in the metaverse? So that got me thinking about what constitutes a high quality education experience, period, whether you're in the metaverse or not. And then part of the event is characterized as addressing challenges and opportunities in creating a global, collaborative knowledge creation ecosystem enabled by immersive technology. So my thoughts sort of flow from thinking about education and the metaverse in these ways: high quality education, knowledge creation ecosystem. And so that's what I've got some thoughts on. So the talk is what I have to say is very simple. I'm going to say a couple of things that I think are things that we ought to watch out for when we're thinking about education in the metaverse. And then I'll point out some things that I think we really want to try to hold on to in terms of bringing in education in the real world, the non-digital world, whatever people want to call it now, into the metaverse. And then I'll offer one sort of controversial idea that's hopefully somewhat instructive. The idea being that as people use the metaverse or create platforms within the metaverse, that they have these kinds of things in mind so that we create a high quality education experience in the metaverse. So that's the thought. So here are 3 things that I think that we should watch out for. The first is that I don't think that learning is primarily about knowledge acquisition, right? So that previous, I can't go back in this slide. I don't know why. The previous slide was about, we're trying to create a collaborative knowledge creation ecosystem. But I don't think that learning is primarily about knowledge acquisition. I think it's more about doing things like connecting dots. It's about giving you a variety of lenses through which to interpret the world. It's giving you the requisite concepts, ideas, arguments. So you see something in the news, I don't know, maybe you've got a bunch of facts about how healthcare in the US works, and maybe you have some facts about, let's say, a CEO being murdered recently. But the right kind of education doesn't just allow you to acquire facts about that situation, but gives you the wherewithal and the ability to assess, let's say, from an ethical perspective, the appropriateness, or in this case, inappropriateness, in my view, of that action. So insofar as people are involved in bringing the education not in the metaverse into the metaverse, I think that thinking about what actually we want to build here is not, or at least primarily, a knowledge acquisition tool, if you like. I think that learning, education, is much more than knowledge acquisition. The other thing that I want to, I think I saw this in the deck somewhere about efficient acquisition. So one of the things that people talk about with AI is the level of efficiency, automation that we can get with AI. You can think about doing the same kind of thing in the metaverse. Metaverse obviously involves AI. We can get people to learn faster, learn more, get them the stuff that they're looking for faster. And I actually think that efficiency is not a great thing. In the learning context. I think that for people to do well with, let's say, the knowledge that they've acquired, is they have to stew in the ideas, or with the ideas. A lot of learning is just about sort of mulling things over, going over it again, and revisiting and just sort of dwelling in those thoughts. So the idea that, you want to jack into the matrix and have all that stuff uploaded as quickly as possible, and now you know kung fu and a bunch of other stuff, that's not real learning. I wasn't planning on saying this, but one thing that I've actually had in my mind since I watched The Matrix as a freshman in college, I think, and as a budding philosophy major, I always wondered, it's one thing I sort of thought, forget about kung fu, what if they uploaded Plato's Republic? What would happen if you uploaded Plato's Republic into my head, via the Matrix thing? And I thought, well, I might have the text in there, but then I have to interpret the text. That's the real learning. Just sort of being able to sort of cite what goes on page 137. That's something or other, but it's not really understanding the text. It's not an interpretation of the text. And the interpretation of the text takes time. So one thing that I think that people should watch out for as they think about metaverse, AI, and education is efficiency is not the goal. Many times just stewing on ideas is what creates new insights, new ideas, seeing connections you hadn't seen before. So I'm sort of against efficiency in an educational environment. And then the other thing to think about is that sometimes video interactions are just different. And of course, everybody knows this. This is anecdotal, but I think it's instructive. When I was a professor, like I said, I haven't been a professor for nearly 7 years now. Of course, I did office hours, and I usually did them in person, but I was a little bit ahead of my time because I was going back and forth between upstate New York, which is where Colgate is, and New York, which is where she was my girlfriend or my fiance or my wife at the time. I don't remember. Anyway, I think we were not yet married. I would conduct office hours via video sometimes, and I'd have people sign up for slots, and they would show up. And one thing that I noticed is that when people came to my office and they were sitting on my couch, and we were chatting about whatever we talked about in class or an assignment or whatever it was, they sort of hung around. They just sort of hung around, and then they'd ask another thing, and they sort of wanted to talk, and they felt comfortable just hanging out and talking more. But when I had those video office hours, there was a huge difference. People would sort of pop on, they'd ask their question, they'd get their answer, and they'd say, okay, great, thank you. And then off they would go. There was something about just it being a video chat, FaceTime or whatever it was, Skype at the time, that made it so that they just felt differently about the nature of the student-teacher interaction, such that it was more efficient. There was a way in which I liked it because okay, great, I'm done. But there was a lot missing from the interaction because they didn't feel that they could hang around more and chat and learn about other stuff and ask other kinds of questions and get different kind of answers and get led down different paths. So I think one thing, this is the third thing that I think metaverse education developers need to look out for is how do you, it's really feel like a design challenge, I suppose. How do you create the environment such that it's not seen as, when it's an interaction between a professor and a student, say, it's not, we're here to get a thing done. And once it's done, we log off, we get out of that chat. I think that's a tough problem to solve, but I think it's crucial. That's 3 things to watch out for. Here are 4 things that I think we want to hold on to in bringing education into the metaverse. And I am, and this is probably coming from the fact that I was a professor for a decade, so I'm a little bit professor biased, you might say. Others might say professor informed, but okay, we can debate that. One thing that happens is that professors ask questions, and the reason that what I have in the back of my head are things like AI agents or AI teachers, that sort of thing, where they've got sort of a learning module that needs to deliver that learning module to the person who will then take the quiz, and they'll show that they passed the quiz, so they acquired the knowledge that they were supposed to. But one thing that experts do, that professors can do, is they can ask you questions that you didn't know could even be asked. It just didn't even occur to you. You didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know you could think that. That sort of thing. I'm skeptical that that's a hard thing to recreate in any kind of automated metaverse system. I mean, again, if it's just a professor in the metaverse with a student, fine, you've got something. But to the extent that you want to automate such things or have AI agents or AI teachers, I think that is something that you want to hold on to, and it's not obvious to me how that gets done. And here's another sort of, I don't know, I have another anecdote for you that, again, I hope is instructive, that teachers make offhand comments that you don't know that they're going to have a huge impact on people. One, I've had this as a professor, where I've had students come back to me and they've said, that thing that you said like really changed the way I thought about X. And I was like, I don't even remember saying that. That wasn't part of the curriculum. It wasn't, in the sort of lecture notes that I had prepared. It just, I don't know, it's something I said and it stuck with them. I have a similar kind of story as a student. When I was a freshman in college, I was talking to my introduction to philosophy professor, and we were talking about my career, what I wanted to do. Again, I was 18 years old, and I said, I don't know. I think at the time I was thinking about law school or maybe getting a PhD in psychology, being a psychologist, something like that. And the professor said, "Oh, don't go to law school. That's a brain drain." And that sort of stuck with me. And then I went back to him maybe a week later and I said, "Hey, when you said law school is a brain drain, did you mean that, or was that an offhand comment?" And I remember him distinctly saying, "Well, it was an offhand comment, but I meant it." And there was something about that I was like, that the clarity of thought, the way that he answered my question made me realize that I asked the question in a way that reveals that I was thinking of things in terms of a false dichotomy. That it's either an offhand comment, and thus insincere, or it's sincere and it's not an offhand comment. But he was like, no, it's an offhand comment and it was sincere. So there was something about the quality of his thought that I found immediately attractive, and I thought, that's the way that I want to be able to think. So this is just another way of saying these are things that I think are crucial to a good, high quality educational experience that it's easy to lose sight of when you're, say, creating a learning platform in the metaverse. Here's a completely unoriginal thought, so I won't dwell on it, but I think thinking can't be offloaded to something else. Right? So it's easy now to sort of ask ChatGPT or Claude or whatever to do the thinking for you. Should be, we don't want students to offload their thinking. And the other is that writing is an act of thinking. Again, I'm certainly not the first to say this. Probably someone said it already today, but writing, the act of writing, is incredibly important. In writing, I think we figure out what it is that we think. Part of the reason for that is, not the whole of the reason, but part of the reason is that writing is a way of slowing down and thus slowing down our thoughts and thus giving us time to reflect on what we're actually writing as we're writing it, to think, oh wait, that's not, I don't think that, no, that's not, oh, that's not good, and then deleting it. So that's a crucial thing to hold on to, and it would be a shame if that weren't held on to in an immersive experience. And then the other thing is that I think that deep learning here, as in human beings learning at a deep level, not deep learning like AI. Deep learning requires rigor, and so I'm wary of gamification. And I was at the tail end of that last talk where gamification was talked about briefly. I'm not against it. It's beware. It's not ban gamification, but I think that really you've really got to go deep on issues to really, really learn. I think that there's a good reason that we have majors in academia, and that's because people can go deep on a topic, and just learning the depths to which one can go in a topic is extremely educational, because then you can know, well, I went deep on philosophy, I didn't go deep on history, but I know it's another discipline, and there must be layers of depth that I can't even begin to comprehend because I barely know the first level of it. So gamification, I think, tends towards the superficial. Maybe it does some great things, but I think it doesn't lend itself to rigor. Jamie put his video on, so that makes me think he wants me to shut up in a second. Is that right? So put thumbs up. No? Okay. Well, I'm going to shut up soon anyway. So I really think that most people are not great at rigorous, deep analysis and thought and staying with an idea and going another layer down and another layer down and another layer down. They want to just learn the next thing. And I think that's the wrong, many ways that makes for a bad educational experience. I think a good educational experience, all else equal, is one that encourages you to reach those depths, because not only do you get an appreciation for those depths, you also appreciate the fact that there are depths to be had in other disciplines as well. So that's another thing. And then the very last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to be done. One controversial idea, maybe it's not even that controversial, but I actually put it in more controversial terms the first time I wrote down the sentence. But it's that learners they're ignorant. They don't know what's out there. There's a lot of, people are curious. They want to explore their curiosity. They know what they're interested in, but I don't think so. I think they don't know how much they don't know. I mean, there is a world of things that they don't know about. They don't even know what their own interests are, because sometimes you don't know that you're interested in X because you didn't know that X existed. Like it wasn't on your radar. And so, we want to empower learners. We want to, let learners create their paths and et cetera, but I think there's a tremendous amount to be said about mentorship and guidance, because the world is huge. They are by definition learners. They are ignorant, non-culpably ignorant. I'm not blaming anyone. And to suppose that sort of learners know what's good for their learning path, I think that it's a pretty idea, but it's just not true. And I think that expertise matters, and having guides out there to show you the way, and to show you also to stop you from going down paths that are not particularly fruitful, that look appealing, but actually that's not the way of rigorous thought. That's the way of something else. So I think appreciating that has to get into the thoughts of people who are bringing education into the metaverse. Okay, so those are my thoughts. Feel free to tear me apart. Like I said, I'm a philosopher by training and mostly by career, so we like a good argument. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Reed. And you've ignited, partially because of me, the most intense conversation in the chat of the day. So
good.
Thank you for pushing us in different directions. And I really did feel like you were going to say Dunning-Kruger 17 times and then didn't get that far. So thank you very much for that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to David for us to get into our Thinkscape session.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Reed. Inspired by the amazing thoughts and concepts of our featured speaker, Reed, and building on the knowledge and insights shared by all of our amazing contributors today, and you who have been involved in our swarm sessions and actively involved in the chat today. This final session is going to bring together all of these thoughts, all of these learnings by employing the interactive AI augmented Thinkscape tool, which helps us to come up with ideas for actually employing today's ideas in the real world at a strategic and practical level. So you are going to tell us and really help to inform and guide the future of interactive learning, which is the point of this entire session. So remember that at any given time, no personal detail is going to be collected beyond what you've already permitted. It's going to be the aggregate output from this exercise of collective intelligence gathering that will be recorded and published in the lab report. So Jamie and I were asked before we actually started this event to kick off this interactive session with 2 questions to inspire your conversation. And based on the amazing sessions today, we came up with the following. The first is, what strategies can ensure scalable and accessible integration of immersive learning in education and corporate training? What innovative strategies can institutions and organizations adopt to seamlessly integrate immersive learning systems into existing educational and corporate training frameworks while ensuring accessibility and scalability across diverse global communities? That's one question. The second that we're going to be addressing in the Thinkscape session is, how can immersive technologies drive global collaboration while ensuring that equity and ethical use that we've been talking about all day? How can immersive technologies foster a truly global and collaborative knowledge creation ecosystem? And what policies or frameworks are needed to ensure equity and sustainability and ethical use across both academic and corporate sectors? In order to facilitate this Thinkscape session, I'm going to welcome Chris Hornbostel from Unanimous AI, who developed the system that we're going to be using to help us conduct this Thinkscape session. Chris.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. My name is Chris Hornbostel. I'm the Director of Operations at Unanimous AI, and I just put a link into chat to join our Thinkscape session that'll bring you on board anonymously. Our anonymous username system uses the Google Documents convention of assigning you a color and an animal. So you'll be joining as pink giraffe or yellow tiger or names of that sort, but you're rest assured your information will be kept anonymous. What Thinkscape does is, it's our attempt, and it has been very successful in all of our alpha and beta testing. It's our attempt to solve the problem about trying to facilitate large groups in discussion with one another. It's very, very difficult to have a discussion with, even sometimes 8 people, 9 people, 10 people together, because sometimes the loudest voice in the room will dominate. Sometimes people are hesitant to offer information. And a lot of times it just ends up being people talking over one another, and we don't actually capture some of the useful things that get said. Uh, we're actually able with Thinkscape, and I'll give a short, we'll do a short tutorial video on how it works here in just a second. We're actually able to facilitate conversations of up to 300 people in ways where people feel like they're heard, their input is valued. And that's very important, especially when dealing with people who are all, you know, have expert opinions, but maybe split across various disciplines within a broader umbrella of a topic. So I do invite you to please click the link and join us here. In the interest of time, I am going to want to get things started here fairly quickly, just because I do want to be respectful of everyone's time today. So I'm going to pop that link up one more time in the chat area. And then if you can direct your attention, those of you who are on Thinkscape already right now, I'm going to show a short video that's going to explain a little bit about how Thinkscape does work. And just for those who happen to be watching on the Zoom screen and not on the ThinkScape platform, I'm just going to wait for this video loop to complete for those who are watching, at home, and then we'll get started with our first question. Okay, excellent. So before we begin, a couple of notes. You will notice we have a couple of accessibility options. At the bottom of the screen, you can see a microphone. If you like, you can test out speech to text. The one thing I would say is please make sure that you keep your Zoom microphone muted if you do choose to use that option. You can also enlarge the size of the text by clicking the A icons that are located just to the right of the microphone in the interface. We're going to get started here with the first of the two questions that were previewed. And just in case I can help out with providing the excellent preamble and context for our two questions today, I've posted that in our chat area. This is going to be an all-text chat discussion. And I'm going to post our first question right now, and then we will proceed to start our discussion. You'll also be able to read a shortened version of the question at the very top of this interface. And the shortened version is simply, what is the best strategy to ensure scalable and accessible integration of immersive learning in education and corporate training, and why? And we really are very, very interested in the why of this particular question. You can see in the upper left that we've got everyone divided into three think tanks. Right now, this is just time to type out your initial thoughts on this particular question. And now AI agents in every room are going to start passing everyone's thoughts back and forth. And now I've set up this particular question to guide the discussion to converge on some of our top answers today. Our back-end reporting, however, does keep track of all the answers made during the session, especially when we are doing a full-on kind of brainstorming exercise such as this one. And we share all of that information in our post-session reports. And just to provide some context for this second question, we want to discuss how we can help individuals develop the right balance between trust and skepticism when engaging with immersive learning tools. What policies or frameworks are needed to ensure equity, sustainability, and ethical use across academic and corporate sectors. We're going to scramble up the makeup of our different think tanks here, and we'll ask this second question to consider. So you can see it shown at the top of the interface. What's the most impactful thing we can do to build trust and critical thinking skills in immersive learning environments, enabling global collaboration across academic and corporate sectors? And why would this be the most impactful thing as you list them? Sorry about that. I broke us out into 2 rooms instead of 3. Let's set it at 3. And once again, our AI agents and everyone's breakout rooms or think tanks are sharing information from each of the individual think tanks to one another. You can also feel free to interact with those messages as they come in. And once again, we're going to do some narrowing of answers just to try to focus the discussion a little bit as we come to the end of our deliberation and discussion on this question. Excellent. Thank you all so much for participating today. David, I'm going to throw it back over to you. Thank you so much for everyone for participating. Feel free to get in touch with us at Unanimous AI if you're interested in our Swarm or ThinkScape tools, but we appreciate you taking part in the discussion we just had.
David, you're muted.
Thank you, Jamie. And thank you, Chris. And thank you, everyone, for your amazing insights in this session. Jamie and I were taking part in observing your insights, and they really demonstrated the mounting comprehension from everything that we've been doing today. I believe that we've not only learned from each other today, but created some real actionable insights that can be used to guide the sector. So I really appreciate your insights and input here. So as we conclude this enriching session on education and training, our heartfelt thanks go to each speaker, participant, and community partner for your invaluable insights and expertise today. Your participation has really shaped today's discourse. I'd like to extend our profound gratitude to Meta, our lead sponsor, for making this event possible, and our headliner, Unanimous AI. Thank you, Chris, again, and the Unanimous AI team for the remarkable support through the Swarm Intelligence exercise and the ThinkScape exercise that we just took part in, which really have enhanced our collaborative endeavours this year and the previous years that we've been running the Metaverse Safety Week. Thanks to the organisation committee teams or strategy education committee members, lead strategy and oversight, technical curators, timekeepers, notes takers, everybody who's been involved in the background making this run smoothly. We couldn't have done it without you. And of course, many thanks to Banijit Chowdhury, Chief of Staff at XRSI, and Kavya Perman, its CEO and founder, without both of whom's vision and immense hard work, this Metaverse Safety Week would never have existed. Finally, thank you to all of our amazing contributors from across the globe. We encourage everyone to continue to contribute to this, sharing relevant links and resources at XRSI, info@xrsi.org, which I'm just going to put in the chat right now so that you can continue to sort of contribute for our post-event roundtable event information and report. Now, as we part today, let's carry forward a message of hope and collaboration, just like we've seen today. The dialogues we've initiated here are just the beginning of a larger movement towards a more open, accessible, and fit-for-purpose education system. Our collective efforts today paved the way for a more inclusive and ethical digital future. Together, we're forging a path where technology serves humanity with dignity and with respect. Thank you once again for your active engagement and commitment to shaping a better, more responsible metaverse. We eagerly anticipate your continued participation and insights into these upcoming sessions, where each day brings us closer to our shared vision of a safe, equitable, and human-centered digital world. Jamie, do you have anything to add?
I've got a duty, a gratitude, and a thought. My duty is to encourage everybody to tune in tomorrow for the last of our sessions, which involves governance and policy for Metaverse Safety Week's last day of our long week. Same time, same bat channel. The gratitude is to you, David, for inviting me to co-host with you, and to thank everybody that you as well thanked. And the thought was, oh my goodness, after all of this collaboration that we've gone through and the AI help that we've had with it, thanks to Unanimous, I really think that there's almost two wings to AI that are emerging. One, we're all experiencing, which is generative AI and a lot of ethical problems with it. And the other is this augmented collective intelligence. And the way we've used it today to just be in the background and encourage and augment what we think and what we're doing is really a very encouraging step forward. And that's my parting thought. So from both David and myself, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Kavya. Thank you, Banu. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And maybe we'll see you tomorrow at Governance and Policy.